This is going to be the City Council, Port Richey City Council meeting for Tuesday, December 8th, 2020. Let's stand for the invocation. I invite Pastor Lord to do the invocation, please.
Thank you, sir. Lord, we just thank you to serve something greater than ourselves, Lord. We thank you for being a part of just bringing love and peace and hope and fellowship to this city. Lord, we do pray for the vision of the city, Lord. You said without a vision, the people perish, Lord, that we would just discipline ourselves to live in a way and work a way the city was greater. So tonight, Lord, we just ask your glory and your wisdom to just come and move in the meeting, Lord. Thank you for the mayor, the council, all of the departments, Lord God. Thank you for their safety. Watch over them, particularly, Lord, our police department, fire department. And now, Lord, we commit this time to you in this service. Take the minds that are here to make decisions and let your wisdom flow through them, Lord God. And we just thank you right now for by your wisdom just leading us in the right direction. And we just thank you for it in Jesus' name.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Looking for a motion to approve council minutes?
Roll call.
We'll do roll call, yeah. Roll call first, sorry.
Oh, we're in a hurry? We're in a hurry.
Mayor Scott Tremblay.
Here.
Vice Mayor William Dittmer.
Here.
Councilwoman Jenny Sorrell.
Here.
Councilman Tom McClary.
Here.
Councilman Tom Kinsella.
Here.
City Attorney James Matthew.
Here.
City Manager Leonard Sossaman.
Here.
Thank you. Okay, now we're looking for a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. At this time, we're going to move on to comments from the general public. There's different comments section. This is the general comment section. However, if anyone wants to speak at a later time as well for any of the issues that are before the city, even if you're not signed up, I'll take a show of hands at that time. But I'll start with the written list. I wanted to start with Richard, and I'm going to do the best I can with the handwriting. Is it Frederick?
Yes.
Come on up. Welcome.
Thank you.
Please state your name and your address, and then you have 3 minutes to speak.
My name is Richard Frederick. My address is 9926 Gray Fox Lane, Port Richey. I appreciate this time. I am very upset about the 7-year-old that was killed in my neighborhood. I've been complaining to the Sheriff's Department and officials for months about the motorcycle racing in my neighborhood. I'm not to say that the Sheriff's Department hasn't done their best. They've gone down to that house on Ridge Road and Fox Hollow at least 2 or 3 times in the last 6 months to try to prevent something from this happening, and it didn't work. Quality of life in Port Richey and in my neighborhood is horrendous. We don't see police cars unless something happens. People that are taxpayers in that neighborhood, they come home from a hard day's work, and their windows are shattering because people are driving up and down the road with their bass on. They're racing up and down the road with their motorcycles. I thought we had speed limits in this country. I thought we had quality of life. I thought maybe, just maybe, we could ticket people. We could find people that we had something to do with noise. A man can't come home from work, or a woman can't come home from work who's a taxpayer and not have their windows bouncing. I mean, this goes back to the broken windows theories, for crying out loud. It's so simple. You can't figure it out? Start giving tickets out. Start taking cars away. Maybe people will wake up. I mean, I get up at 5:30 in the morning every morning. I work 5 days a week. I'm 61 years old. And by the time I walk out my front door at 7 o'clock, 6:30, all my neighbors are gone. They're all hardworking people. They're all Spanish and black and white in my neighborhood. They're all hard tax-paying people, and they got to come home to this? It's not right. Someone has to do something. Now we lost a 7-year-old child over this. What are we going to do, name a street after this kid? Is that the way it's going to work? Oh, so hooray. I'm 61. You know how many kids' names I've seen in New York City? Streets named after them because they got killed? When is it going to stop? When are we going to wake up? Does it make you a bad person because you want law and order? I've been a Republican my whole life. I've always believed in law and order, but I'm starting to wonder. But like I said, the sheriff has been there. They've tried. They really have. I've seen them at the house 2 times, 12, 13 cars. Apparently that's not working. They're not getting the message. Things have to be confiscated. People have to get tickets. They got to wake up. We can't do this to the taxpayers. It's not fair.
And I appreciate your concern. One of the issues that you face is that the jurisdiction that you're going to really want to go to is going to be the county. Our police department normally stays within city limits, but it's the incorporated city limits, which would be just outside of where you're talking about. The venue that you would want to continue with some of your concerns, my recommendation would be the Board of County Commissioners meeting, because they control that area, and I think they would be happy to entertain some of the concerns you have. But I just want to make sure that you get to the right place. And you know, there's some overflow obviously between that area and then our city, just because it's fairly close in proximity. But I think you're best served over with the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. The next person that signed up is Frank. Is it Boter? Batari. I'm sorry. Welcome. Come on up.
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
All right, what I'm here about is my water bill. And
Sir, can you give your address, please? Your name and address?
Frank Batari, 5118 Bems Court, Port Richey, Florida 34668. All right, started basically my water bill. I paid, it was 66. Then the next couple of months it was 260 something. Three something, and the last one was Thursday. I came to pay $110 because obviously the fella came and checked it, did pressure and all that. There's a line broke somewhere underneath the house. I pretty much told him I can't afford to have it fixed, so he was nice enough to help me out and put a thing there to shut the water off, because I'm not allowed to touch the thing outside by the street. So I got a $475 water bill as of Thursday. I offered to pay $110 because that's all I could pay. Then she gives me the paper, which I have here, showing me the past 3 months comes out to $68 alone, just for late fee or whatever you want to call it. So my bill would be about $40. I'm by myself at home, that's it. And I said my bill would be about $40, maybe 50 the most. So I guess, well, my point is, I got a $475 bill. Plus these fees. She told me you could do a payment plan for 3 months at $186 for 3 months. I said, here's $110. That's the best I can do. And she said, well, that's not good enough. So I walked out. I tried to get in touch with whoever, and that's why I'm here. I can't pay this bill. It ain't my fault the line's broke or whatever, but you want to shut my water off, go ahead. Yeah, I'm angry, but it's just not going to happen. That's all I can say.
Thank you. We'll look into that.
Well, and you plan to do anything about it, or?
Some of those issues going to be city management
I went to the
issues.
office, I talked to this one, that one, that one. They all passed me around. It's like, I wanted to speak to the person in charge, and that's why I'm here.
Okay.
I figured I'd tell, I guess you about it. $475 bill. I can't do it, and I can't get a plumber to fix that and try to pay a bill at the same time. It's impossible. You got no offense to people, but you have some people living on checks, and they seem to get away with a lot of things, and yet the working class people like myself, when you get backed up a little too far, it just seems like there's no one to turn to anymore. But those ones that never worked a day in their life, they seem to get away with things like this.
The best I can tell you is we can look into it. I can't
Here's the
offer you.
paperwork. You want it?
It'll be something.
I'm not trying to be rude to you, but
No, I understand.
I just don't think it's right.
But it's something that we would look into. Like I said, I can't give you an answer now, and I haven't talked to anybody about this. So
Well, every day I gotta wonder when you're gonna shut my water off. Anybody want me to go to Walmart and buy a couple of gallons of water to keep me going?
So thank you. We'll look into it. We'll do the best we can for you.
When am I gonna know anything?
What's that?
When will I know anything?
Someone from the city at some point, if you contact them, they'll give you an answer.
come here and ask them another day?
Correct, it'll be the administrative portion that deals with that, which would be city management.
Time-wise? 1 day, 3 days, 5 days?
Sir, I'm not going to give you an answer because I don't
Well,
dictate.
I gotta worry about if my water goes off. That's my concern. I mean, I have a right to know that.
Okay. Does anyone else on the council have any other comments or issues here?
I have nothing further.
Nothing? Okay. Thank you, we'll look into it, I appreciate it.
So it's, again, come back next week. If I still have my water, come back and ask them if there's anything happening. Is that all you're telling me?
Correct. Because we generally don't dictate what management does with some of those issues. It's,
Well, I talked to management, and they all
Okay.
said, gave me the same story. That's why I figured, me personally, I'll talk to the boss. No offense to that, but
right, but there's a division. We set policy and ordinances. We don't really manage the city from a operational standpoint. That's done by city management. So that's the issue, okay?
well, I'll tell you straight out, I can't afford to get a plumber, and I can't afford to pay the bill.
Okay.
I offered to pay $110, but that's just keeping me in a hole. And a $68 late fees for 3 months, as they put it, is impossible. I'll never be able to pay it. I'll never catch
I
up.
understand. It's something that I'll look and I'll talk to somebody at some point about it as soon as this is over. But there's other city business that we have to attend to right now.
Well,
If your intent is to
Today's
get it resolved
Tuesday.
right now, it's not going to happen
I'll
because.
come back Friday. I'll come talk to these people here Friday. If they have an answer, they have an answer. If they don't, then come back another day.
I understand.
If my water goes off, what do? Come here again and talk to them?
Correct. The city employees should be able to help you with that.
My point is, I don't have $475 to turn the water on again.
No, I understand your predicament. But I don't control whose water goes on and off. That's a different function of the city.
Well, like I said, this is an incident that happened, wasn't my fault, and blah, 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 all that stuff. And I'm not
So-
trying to cry to nobody, because I just figure, you could try to break down the bill a little bit to try to help out a person who's been here for about 4 years now, and I paid every bill on time, except now, this is the only one I ever have that's been
Nope.
late.
I understand the issue. We're kind of going around and around now, so I want to move on, but it'll be looked into.
I'll be back Friday then.
Thank you. The next person that signed up was Pastor Leonard Lord. I wanted to invite you back up to the podium.
Thank you, Mayor. I know this may be our last meeting before Christmas, and I do just want to wish you a great Christmas time, remembering we're celebrating the greatest gift. God gave the gift that takes care of sin and gives us hope and eternity. So Jesus is the reason for the season, and want to remember that and not run amok with fairy tales, but the truth of what Christmas is about. And with that, I believe all of y'all got one of these last time. I've got some extras if you didn't, but we do invite you to come to our community Christmas dinner celebration, December 16th at 6 o'clock. We know with the pandemic we're in some tough times, so as you see on it, we'll actually have drive-through for gifts. Please, I thank the Lord for the fire department, all the gifts they gave us. I thank for the help of the police department and the city. It's just been a joy to work together with y'all to help people. So if you do know families that need something, if they are afraid to get out, if they could just drive by and at a distance we can get gifts for their children. And so we just invite y'all all to come and just be a part of our Christmas celebration, celebrating the greatest gift that's ever been given, Jesus, the Son of God. So, Lord bless you. Have great holidays, and any way we can help, let us know. Okay. Thank you,
Pastor
Mayor,
Lord.
Council. Thank all of you. Lord bless you.
There was someone else that it looks like signed in and then crossed their name out. So here's what I'm going to do. Anyone else who would like to speak, just raise your hand and I'll call you. Pat Rogers, welcome. Come on up to the podium.
Pat Rogers, 4838 Sunset Boulevard. I'd just like to make a suggestion in reference to the gentleman with the water bill problem. I have 3 rentals in the city and have occasionally had a broken pipe or something. It seems to me like there should be some way, some alarm, something in this electronic system we have of meter reading. When it shows water usage, it just spikes out of anything that's normal, so that an owner could be notified ahead of time. Yep, seems like that ought to be easy enough to do in our computer age.
Thank you, I appreciate the input. Anyone else who hasn't signed up that would like to speak just in the general comments? Seeing no more hands, we're going to move on. We're going to move on to comments from our city manager, and I'd like to invite Mr. Sossaman to speak at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things tonight. I know you've got a protracted, long agenda, if you will, with an item for discussion. It was a PUD. But I do have a new CPR project list available for you. I've got a hard copy here tonight to give to you before you get away tonight. And also to let you as a citizen, also the citizens know that Valerie Wise, my assistant, put it online today. So it's up to date. It's up to date as this week, if you will. Also, I am going to be introducing to you now Interim Fire Chief Gary Policastri. He's going to be talking to you a little later at that time on the agenda that Councilwoman Sorrell asked for oral reports from your department heads. And since he's a newly appointed department head, he and I have chatted. He feels comfortable. He's a 32-plus year veteran, if you will, from the Pasco County Fire Department. He's served in all the hot spots, if you will, over those 32 years. He's degreed in fire science. He's taught fire science at the fire academies, and he's very well qualified. I think we're happy with him so far. I know I am. He comes to see me regularly and stays in constant contact with this man. And if I'm wrong about that, Captain Quinn's here tonight. He can contradict me if he wants. He and I are on good terms, but I don't think he will. Last but not least, I know it comes up from time to time, an inquiry as to the status quo, if you will, pursuant to the State Auditor General's Office audit on the city. We responded on November the 19th to the, I guess it was about a week old or so at that time, to the latest and greatest epistle. It was about 4 or 5 pages long that they sent us with questions. Our response was even longer, 64 pages in length. I haven't had any contact since that November 19th when we did respond. And as depending on my tenure here or the next person that you get, that person can continue this effort. And the most thing I can tell you beyond that right now is that the Auditor General's Office said they hope to be complete with it sometime in the spring of 2021. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Does anyone have anything for Mr. Sossaman? Okay. This time we're going to move on to comments from the council, and I'm going to start with Mr. Kinsella to my right.
At this time, I don't have anything. Thank you.
Mr. McClary,
I have nothing at this time.
Councilwoman Sorrell.
We have a long agenda. Let's move on.
Sorry, I have one item. I wanted to ask with the chief, property on, I believe it's Siesta Lane, almost directly behind George's. I was by there last week. They had stuff stacked up 8 feet high in that property. I haven't been back this week. I don't know, it may have changed since then, but I want to make sure that we're doing something that we can do with that.
Yes, we're working on it. Prior to me getting here from 2013, just a little background on that. From 2013 to present, we've had 202 calls for service at that residence. We've issued 7 county ordinance violations, none of which he's complied with. And at the present time, we have 2 capiases for his arrest at this time. We're just waiting for it to get entered into the system. But what it looks like is that every time he goes to court, he gets RRR'd, which means he's released on his own recognizance, and he goes back out and he does not comply with either paying the fine or cleaning up the property as the judge mandates. So we're trying to do what we can on our end. I know Dallas is doing what he can on his end, but it seems to be what lacking in the court system at this point.
What kind of recourse do we have as a city to handle that?
And
Can I help you, Chief? I appeared in court yesterday, I think it was yesterday morning, Monday morning or yesterday morning, on both of those capiases. He had been arrested and released on his own recognizance. He did not appear again yesterday, so the judge has now ordered him to pay a certain amount of fines before they're going to release him, so I suspect he'll be kept for a little bit of time. But once he's kept, they'll probably keep him till the next arraignment for these charges. But then, as a practical matter, he's whatever he does, whether he pays or doesn't pay, I'm going to want compliance. I doubt if he's going to comply, just to the nature of what's going on here. And then it'd have to go through another process to have him arrested for noncompliance. Okay. I know we've been talking to Dallas about, whether it's going to be proceed to the demolition issue of it or not. But if not, we may be stuck with some sort of circuit court matter to drag him in. But that takes a long time, just like other properties like that. So.
It has to be some kind of a safety hazard.
Well, that's where we're going with it. So it's probably dragged out a little now because there wasn't any county court going on for a very long time in terms of arraignments and those things with code enforcement. So that's getting back to normal probably at the first of the year. They've set some new dates and stuff, but I'm just kind of standing in for the chief here. Between myself, the chief, and Dallas, we've talked about it. And at some point in time, we're going to have to go and get some order from the court to knock the building down, but that's a hard thing to do. It takes a lot of time. Okay, so it's not a great answer, Councilman. I know the chief brought my attention before.
That's all I have.
Okay. I had a couple different items. I wanted to start, I was contacted by Tanya Gorman, and she puts together and organizes for the county MPO meetings. There's an MPO meeting coming up on December 10th, 2020 at 10 in the morning. The venue is going to be out of the historical building in Dade City. I'm already scheduled to appear in court on this side of the county, so I know I can't appear. I was hoping that one of either the vice mayor or council members would be available or have an interest in potentially filling in on my behalf for the city at that particular MPO meeting. And I didn't know, I was going to ask to see if it's at 10 o'clock on December 10th, which is going to be this Thursday. I think they have a quorum, so you can appear virtually if you don't want to travel to Dade City. Okay. What I'll do is I'll contact Tanya Gorman tomorrow. I'll give her a call and have her send Mr. Sossaman, I guess, the information, and then have him pass it on to you if you don't mind. Okay, is that okay, Mr. Sossaman? Okay. The other item that I spoke to with Ms. Gorman when she called is she said that it was, I guess, my duty to appoint someone from the city for the CAC, which was the county CAC as it relates to the MPO board meeting, and they have a CAC, which are Citizens Advisory Committee that put together recommendations for the county. I think she noted that we have an active CAC over here in Port Richey, which I think kind of attracted her to reach out. What I wanted to know from the board is if it's okay if I appoint, and I was going to pick one of our CAC members, Linda Rodriguez, to appear on behalf of the city for those CAC meetings in the county. I wanted to make sure there's no objections.
I think that's a great idea.
No objections.
Okay, and they noted that if she can't appear, that any of the other CAC meetings would be able to fill in for her, so we can coordinate that. So we can have one of our CAC members at their meetings.
I'm assuming Linda's okay with it. Okay.
Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up is with our committees, I wanted to address and put it on the next agenda as an item, which would be hopefully, depending on how we vote tonight, into the new year, and kind of set some policy. We had a citizen that jumped on a committee while there were pending applications, and then we're involved in that process. And I think that we should address that and potentially make policies that don't allow our citizens to engage in committee activity and while there's pending applications that should be kind of passed on down the road. And really the idea is to prevent citizens from getting on a committee for the purpose, for their own personal issues, as opposed to for the furtherance of the city or so on and so forth. So I wanted to address that, but I felt it would be more appropriate just to set it for an agenda item into January. You guys okay with that? Yep. Okay. And the aim is to set a policy so we can regulate that. That's what I want to discuss if we can. Mr. Soxman, you okay with that? Yes. Okay. With that, I wanted to start, move on to the next item, which would be comments from boards and committees. And I see Linda Rodriguez here for the CAC, so I wanted to invite her up to the podium to speak.
Linda Rodriguez, 5917 Lantern Court. I am here for the CAC, and I've been to you guys a couple of times about the name for the WOD. We have had internet, Facebook polls, and then Mr. Dittmer had suggested we also do it at the Meet Your Neighbor, have a vote there. So we did, and we got a nice turnout. I wrote it down. Hold on, please. So Cody River Landing has got 52 votes, and Port Richey Riverside has 33. So that's the combination of the Facebook votes as well as the Meet Your Neighbor votes. So I wanted to present that to you and make you aware and see where you wanted to go from there.
Cody River Landing was the...
Cody River Landing got 52, and Port Richey Riverside got 33. Okay. It was 42 on Facebook and 10 at Meet Your Neighbor, and 26 Facebook and 7 at Meet Your Neighbor.
Okay.
That's how it broke down.
And thank you. And from a legal perspective, is there anything that we need to do? Do we need to meet as a council, pass an ordinance? What do we need to do if we're going to change the name of the Waterfront Overlay District?
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I said, he's going to call on me.
But we're not
Catch me
really
off.
changing it, we're just putting a
Renaming it.
name to it.
Yeah, it was never really named.
Very good,
Waterfront
Mr. Gonzeller. The Waterfront Overlay District is a term used in our code for an overlay district, okay? Nothing more, nothing less. I don't think it's necessary to change our code in the 50 places with the word Waterfront Overlay District. If the city going forward is going to put up signs or something and call that something on a regular basis, I think the only thing you need to do to make a formality to it is to create a resolution, which I could prepare, setting forth what the names are, what the name is, Cody River Landing.
Correct.
And that it'll be referred to as that in all documents going forward. Okay, I don't think we need to change the code for Water Overlay District, because it's nothing more than a name, as Councilman Kinsella just said. And any more than that, okay, it's an area of the city, no more if you wanted to call the east side or the west side. So I could prepare that resolution. I can't think of any other thing we could do. But if you want me to prepare it, I'll go ahead and prepare it for the next meeting. It's not a problem.
Can we prepare it for the next meeting, and then I think we should discuss it and vote on it if that's what we're going to do.
Okay. Yeah, and if I think of something in the interim, I will. You kind of catch me off guard.
Yeah,
But
yeah, sorry about that.
No, I didn't mean it that way. But I'll have that for the next meeting, and if I think of some other reason to make it more formal, I'll do it. Cody River Landing, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. At Port Richey of Port Richey. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Cody
Rodriguez.
River Landing, got it.
This time we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Looking for a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Let's move on to council business. The first item up for council business is going to be the zoning change application for the villas at Cody River, which is a presentation of resolution 20-09. This looks like it's going to be a quasi-judicial matter, so it's my understanding there's going to be evidence accepted, there's going to be testimony, so I wanted to check with the clerk first of all and the council to make sure that everyone's received the application. And did you guys
Yes.
receive
Yes.
everything?
Yes.
Okay. And then part of the application, it looked like there were two kind of addendums that kind of came in after, that came in as part of the packet.
There's addendums?
Not addendums, but there looked like there were, I think, a couple things that came in after. That was,
I have a transportation analysis given to me by the developer.
Okay.
That will need to be entered in as evidence.
Okay.
And then I also have full-sized, larger-sized plans given to me by the building department, or for council to review in case the ones that are in the packet are too small.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Yes.
could, I don't think that exactly what you were referring to, but for the record, if you look at the agenda item here, you'll see the covering sheet. And the first document is the resolution, which was the decision of the Planning and Zoning Board. And as you can see, neither a motion in favor or a motion not in favor passed, so they were at deadlock. So that's the recommendation, is a deadlock to you. But the next page is an interoffice memorandum, in which is referring to the documents you were referring to, which says, please see the attached December 8th, 2020 staff evaluation recommendations. Modifications were made following the November 19th, 2020 Planning and Zoning Board meeting, okay? And Ms. Varana for the city will explain those further. Now, behind that, you'll see a staff evaluation and recommendation to council. Beginning bottom right-hand corner, you see the 16. Tammy Varana for the city will go over that with you. That is different than what was presented, slightly different than what was presented to the Planning and Zoning Board. Then behind that, you see what's called attachment aiding zoning change application. There's nothing there, but behind that is attachment B, the ordinance, and there's nothing there. And then it says attachment C, and behind that it says exhibit B, conditions of approval. These conditions of approval, as you'll see on the second page with a 30 at the bottom right, are revised conditions of approval that the city and the builder have come to agreement on. You'll see on the second page those changes, and Tammy Veranda will explain that. Once you get past that document, you come to the notice of zoning change. From there to the back are the documents which are presently a part of the file, okay? So that portion is your file. These are additional documents here, which are now part of the record. I see file, I mean the record, okay? And they'll be explained by Ms. Varana. Okay, so that's your record now. If you're going to take anything else like additional transportation studies, you'll accept them as evidence or not, and I assume you know how to do that, sir. So does that answer your question?
yes, but what I was asking the council is if we can accept all this into the record.
Well, okay, I just wanted to identify
Correct.
it.
Correct.
Okay, so if you want to explain what that, you haven't even heard about the transportation thing. You haven't seen it, haven't heard anything about it.
That's brand new,
Yeah,
is my
right.
understanding.
Right.
So can we accept everything except for that, and then once that's explained, we'll make a decision on the transportation?
Yes, because these are offered as part of the city, so
Right.
they're automatically part of the record. Yes, you need to take that transportation, take it up and decide whether you think it's relevant and then vote on it, correct?
Okay.
And the other document is nothing more than the PUD plan, nothing more than a bigger picture of something, a larger something of something you have in here. so.
Actually, could I get a copy of that? Because some of the questions I had in the review was pertaining to the document being too small.
You can hand it out now, that's just a dirty party package. Yeah, I recommend
That's
you
just
do.
demonstrative evidence that we can utilize, correct?
It's already part of the packet,
Okay.
it's just a bigger one, that's
Okay,
all.
I got you.
Okay? So I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mayor, but. it might
No, that's
make-
okay. I just wanted to
want
make
the
sure
record
that
to
we're
be
clear
clean.
for the record on everything
Yes.
that's coming in.
Yes, sir.
And any objections to the application coming in that was presented?
As far as what's in here now.
Okay. And then everything else coming in so far that's been sent in, other than the transportation study, which we haven't seen? Any issues with any of that coming in from the council?
Is this a new traffic study that you're talking about over here?
I don't know anything about the traffic study, but we're going to take evidence here in a minute. Testimonial evidence. But I wanted to get the application and everything in first for us to be able to review. And with that, when we start these proceedings, One of the first things that needs to happen is I wanted to go around and ask each and every council person if there's been any ex parte communications with either with the applicant in this particular case, and I was going to start with Mr. I haven't either.
I've had none.
I have none.
Okay. Any reason that anyone that sits on this particular council for this particular issue has an issue being fair in terms of hearing all sides of the issues? Mr. Kinsella?
I have no problem, no
Okay.
issues.
I have no issues.
No,
I don't either. Okay. And I don't know at this point if there's been any written communications, but I was hoping the clerk will let us know when we get to the public commentary. The next thing I want to do is identify all the parties who were involved in this, because we need to identify parties to know who's going to take testimony and participate in cross-examination. We have the applicant. And is there a representative? Can you identify yourself, sir?
Yes, sir. Carlos Yepes, 6654 78th Avenue, North Pinellas Park.
What's your name?
Carlos Yepes.
Can you spell your last name? for me?
Yepes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then from the city, welcome. Come on up. Can you please identify yourself, please?
My name is Tammy Vrana Consulting, 260 Tucker Street, Safety Harbor.
Thank you. Spell your last name for me.
Vrana.
And I want to know if there's any other intervening parties. By definition, an intervening party would be a party that has a different interest other than the public at large. If anyone else feels that they're an intervening party or should be a party to this, please come on up and identify yourself, and we'll see whether or not that's the case. Okay, so the parties that we have are going to be the city and the applicant who's the builder. That having been said, the public at large will still be able to give testimony and or opinion after the city and the builder testify. So that's going to be procedurally how we handle it. Also, the city and the builder will also be not only subject to cross-examination when they speak, but will also be, because they're parties, able to cross-examine other parties that testify. So that's kind of the procedural rules on how we're going to proceed. The council also will have the ability to cross-examine or ask questions. And what I want to do is the evidence portion first. I want to start with testimonial evidence, and then we will go from there. And the first person I wanted to call to take testimony from would be Tammy Vrana on behalf of the city, please. Yes. Everyone who's going to testify, give any kind of evidence or statement, please stand and raise your right hand.
Make it simpler, you could call for any, just so the general public understands, they can testify and offer factual information during this portion of the hearing. If so, they're going to need to be sworn.
Okay.
That doesn't preclude them from, after a motion's made later, to give their opinion in terms of your discussion. So if they want to offer factual information, they can also be sworn, so you might want them to stand up or swear them in as they come up one at a time.
Anyone from the public that wants to testify, also please raise your right hand and receive the oath. It's going to be our city clerk that swears you in.
Would this include general public as well? So everyone that's gonna-
Correct, anyone that wants to testify.
So anyone who's wants to testify tonight, please stand and raise your right hand. That would include general public, so if you have any public comment to make this evening, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to hold, I apologize. Do you swear to give the truth during this, and correct testimony during this hearing? I do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other procedural issues before we begin?
You're doing fine, Mayor, thank you.
Okay.
No, this isn't working. guess I've lost my internet connection, so. Okay, well, we'll just have to hope that I remember the first couple slides, because those are the only ones I needed help with. So again, my name is Tammy Verana, and I'm serving as the city's city planner for projects such as this, development review. Okay, so this request is for the subject site, which is 7616 Washington Street, which is 35.95 acres. And the applicant, who is Bel Air, let me see here, I might have it, oops. Bel Air Development Corp. I'm sorry, I don't have my notes with me, so I'm going to wait. So the request for the zoning change is to change the current R3 multiple family residential district and the current C1 commercial district to the planned unit development district, or PUD. And this would allow up to 126 single-family attached, which are also known as two-family units in your code, and then also a PUD development plan, which was just passed around and also in your packet, along with development standards, and we'll go into those later. So a little bit of background beforehand, and this is where I was really relying on my notes, so I'll just have to try to remember as best as possible. So in the past, this property was rezoned in 2005 to allow up to 192 attached units. At that time, the developer went forward, and you can see the road network that was laid out on the site, as well as the earthwork to support the future residential units. That project did not move forward, and it expired per the terms of the conditions of approval. And in 2014, the applicant came back to the city and renewed that request for a PUD, went through the same process that we're going through tonight to rezone it to PUD, because it had reverted back to its current R3 zoning that you see today. That 2014 request was to allow 78 units. And then in that also expired because we had a 180-day time frame for that development to proceed. It did not proceed in that time frame, so the developer came back with essentially the exact PUD plan, and that was approved for 78 units. Since that time, you'll see the property to the top, which is a little over 3 acres. I don't have my notes again. That was added since the 2015 approval. So that part was not, of course, included in this background, but I wanted to show it to you because it is an addition to the case we're looking at right now. So we looked at the existing land uses. Of course, the property is just pretty much vacant with some wetlands and, of course, the preliminary development that occurred on the site. But around the property is a combination of mixed use, commercial office, residential, and wetlands. Then we also looked at the future land use map, which is a part of your adopted city comprehensive plan. And the site has 2 different designations under the future land use map. The residential, which is on the main body of the site, and then that new parcel that was added is actually commercial mixed use. So around the site, we look for compatibility with what is designated around the site. So to the north, we have a residential and also commercial mixed use designations. To the south is residential. To the east is your wetland area, which is recreation open space on your future land use map. And then to the west is residential. And then more fine-grained land use planning for the site is zoning, and what we're addressing tonight. So as we said before, the subject site has C1 zoning, which is that commercial zoning, and R3, which is your multi-family residential. And then around the site, you have, again, the C3. Actually, it's supposed to be, I think, it is C3. So there's some mixed-use residential there off of, I believe, Leo Kidd Avenue. There's some residential 2, which is a little less intense, R1, a little less intense than that. To the east, you have your agricultural 1, which is your wetland area. And to the south, to the west, C1, R2, and an R1, a combination of commercial and residential. So this is just a view from the street, the first one looking from Washington at Broadway to the sort of north, I guess, northwest. And then below is looking the opposite direction from Washington at Regis Street. And just in case we want to pull this up later, we have those. You see the subject site on both of those images. So this is the PUD development plan. You can see that phase 2 is that 3.39 acres that was added more recently, and then the 3.54 acres. And this is just, I'll go over in more detail some of the features on the site, but you can see the 126 two-family units that are located on the existing roadway network. So part of the PUD, the proposed PUD zoning, is to establish development standards. Every zoning district in the city has zoning or development standards, and I've listed those that apply to the current zoning, the R3, and also the C1. The developer is requesting changes in the front yard setback that differ by 5 feet than the R3 and also the C1 district. And then also for side yard is requesting a 10-foot separation, which is allowed in the C1 portion of the site, but 15 feet is the separation in the R3 zoning district. And then for the rear yard, it would be a 20-foot rear yard setback as opposed to what is 25 feet in the R3 district, and there's no difference in what is allowed today in the C1 district. So these are the proposed elevations of the dwelling units. So you can see that they're two family units, driveways, and they're single story. And then there is a proposed clubhouse, and this shows the elevation, the clubhouse facade, and then also the site plan to the bottom, and then the floor plan for the clubhouse to the right. And you have these in your packet as well. So the target market and the residential amenities for the site, they're going to be 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath units. They're going to be rental units rented at the prevailing market rate or rates at the time. It's going to be non-age restricted. The target audience or the consumer are families, and then also a growing segment of work from home households. It will have the private clubhouse, a swimming pool, the children's playground, which I kind of marked there. That's also where the clubhouse and swimming pool is, where the children's playground is, and the dog park up towards the north. And then there will be 2 full gated access points to the development. So the members will have code or key pass access, as will the police department. So part of the requirements of your land development code are to look at these, I believe, 19 different criteria, and staff reviewed each one of those. They're laid out in your staff report, and I can, if you have questions later, I can go into more detail. But staff found that the criteria was met in all regard. I will bring up adequate public facilities, because that's always a big item to make sure that the new development would be able to be served at an adequate level of service. And that is per your standards in your comprehensive plan. So we looked at those standards, we looked at the additional units, what that load would be relative to the your public facilities, which are listed on the slide: transportation, potable water, wastewater, and stormwater drainage, and then finally solid waste disposal. And we found in all cases that public facilities are adequate or would be adequate to support the planned unit development. So relative to the traffic analysis, because that was of great interest during the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, and I had gone through and done sort of a basic traffic analysis using the Institute of Traffic Engineers trip generation rates for a 2-family type of development, and then also using traffic counts from Pasco County, which are not always like right up to date because they're doing rolling counts all the time. So it's just really standard that you just go pick those counts. And so that's what we presented before. But since the time, the developer has gone forward and paid for a traffic analysis by a reputable engineering firm that's been in the industry for a very long time. And what they came up with is that the project would generate 73 trip ends in the PM peak hour. So essentially between 4 and 6 p.m. when we really see the most traffic, when there's a lot of burden on our streets for, you see congestion and whatnot, that the 73 trips that would be generated from the site would be 46 would be coming inbound to the development and 26 would be leaving. 27 would be leaving. So the traffic data actually came from counts that were done by the traffic engineer on 3 days. Those were machine counts, and they took place on Washington Street north of Alto Avenue. And then to those counts, they applied DOT's peak season adjustment factors. So that looks at, and this is very typical, they have all these statistics and whatnot, and they know what during peak season with snowbirds in town and just our swelling seasonal population. So they applied that to the counts. And then on
1 second, this is referencing the new study or the study that from
the
here?
new study. This is the new study.
That hasn't been entered into evidence yet.
Well, I guess I can go back to my before I had indicated, I think it was 93 PM peak hour trips. And then we were also using Pasco County counts from 2009, I believe, and 2 counts from 2017.
Which were outdated.
Well, they're not outdated. They're the best available data. So unless you send somebody out to actually do counts, which is done, but if you don't have, like if you're not paying for, like if the city doesn't pay for like a traffic analysis or they haven't requested one because it's a fairly small amount of trips for a development. So typically the city has a proportionate fair share impact fee program to where you pretty much pay your fee and go as long as there is adequate capacity on the roadway. And there was, and we'll show you in a second, there's more than adequate capacity on Washington Street, so it really wasn't felt to be a need. But however, because there was some level of discussion at the Planning and Zoning Board, the developer went ahead on his own and hired somebody to sign and certify a traffic analysis, which has been entered, well, I guess it will be entered tonight if you accept it. So okay, so let's go to the next. So this is also from the traffic study that was received today, and you can see at the top, based on the peak hour capacity of Washington Street, and then the trips that are going the peak season and project traffic, and then the seasonal traffic. So all those factors I talked about, they factored those into the 1,700 peak capacity trips that Washington Street can handle, and there is available capacity of 1,324 trips, and then PM is 1,204, which that's what should be on the slide. I did that quickly today, so it should be 1,204 available trips on Washington Street. And the estimated project trips are 73. So you can see from that there's more than sufficient capacity on Washington Street to accommodate an additional 73 PM peak hour trips. So part of the PUD development plan typically has PUD conditions of approval, and these are the things that the city has identified to ensure they're protected, that the things that have been requested are set in stone. These things will be appended to site plans that come forward, because of course there'll be other approvals that will be required before the developer can pull building permits. So just generally, and these are all within your packet, generally a responsible entity shall be assigned, and it shall not be the city. It'll be other than that. The time frame to commence construction, again, 180 days. If that doesn't occur, the site would refer back to the R3 zoning that exists today. For wetland protection, all swift mud permit requirements, you have to receive permits and follow all the permit requirements. For neighborhood compatibility, we had started out, this is one of the changes that you'll see. So we had started out in this, I would say back in 2014, that we thought that the fence might be not desired, that maybe the development should interact with the neighborhood, and that maybe a fence would be something that you'd want to regulate, not necessarily to barrier off, but the opposite. But that was totally, I did not estimate that the neighborhood would want to have it fenced off. So what we changed was it was no longer going to be a maximum of 6 feet, but it has to be at least 6 feet. That's what the request from the Planning and Zoning Board was. And then there would be landscaping, and any fencing or landscaping plans would need to be brought to the City Council for approval before before that is a done deal. So that would be coming to you at a later date. But I believe the developer, the applicant, has images with him tonight. So for land use, it's up to the 126 two-family units. Again, market rate rents would be in those conditions of approval, and then the minimum development standards that I went through in the table. For traffic circulation, those internal sidewalks, which have largely been built, those would be 4-foot minimum width. To reconstruct the sidewalk near the development, which is kind of an S-curve, which is a little bit difficult for bikes riding in that area, and also to provide some striped crossing where the driveway is, so for to bring awareness to the pedestrians. There would be 2 functional ingress and egress accesses in the development. The gated entry on Washington Street would have enough space on site for 3 vehicles to be stacked, so there wouldn't be any vehicles hanging out into Washington Street and holding things up. The streets inside the development would be private. They would be constructed to city standards, and as I mentioned before, the police would have access to the gate system and also have jurisdiction over those internal streets. Relative to utilities, drainage, water service, and wastewater, they would of course need to meet all applicable city and state standards. There would be a tie-in to any future reclaimed water service that would be offered by the city. And then also there'd be a perpetual maintenance to all drainage easements associated with the site. So staff's finding and recommendation is that this request is consistent with the city comprehensive plan goals, objectives, and policies, and also the city land development code requirements. And our recommendation to City Council is to approve the request for the zoning change and PUD development plan subject to the PUD conditions of approval. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And the applicant is also here tonight, so anything that's too detailed, I'm sure that they would be happy to answer those questions as well. Thank you.
Procedurally, what I'd like to do is allow any cross-examination from the other party with the, I'm going to pronounce your name the best I can.
Just call me Carlos, that's fine.
Carlos.
That's right. We waive cross-examination.
Waive any kind of cross-examination. Okay. And with that, cross-examination would come over to the council and questions from us. And I wanted to just open up if there's any questions from the council. I had a few, but I was going to start with the council first.
I have a question on the part with it being a gated community, being private. If a vehicle is left on the street, what enforcement can the city do? Code enforcement, again, being a private community.
We're going through the process right now with Villa Bay, getting MOU agreement with them to allow us to do traffic enforcement within the streets because it is private. So I knew during an initial meeting with this organization, they had agreed that they would do the same thing. So at the present time, it's myself and the attorney are working on that agreement. They have it in their hands, and it'll be up to the legal team to review it, but that will give us the authority to enforce.
But at any
traffic
time, they could
bans.
turn around and withdraw that?
It's just like any other agreement, but it has to be within a specified time. You just can't do it. It's like
What
any other-
about on the code enforcement side of it? I mean, the law enforcement side of it, I understand, but more so on the code enforcement, again, if I have an abandoned vehicle, a trailer parked in that front parking area and just leave it there, no tag, no tires, jack it up, what's,
Yeah, answer those questions.
please?
Carlos Yepes again.
What I want to do is, procedurally, I think the cleanest way to do this is to have the city answer all the questions, and then he will
Sure.
have a chance
Okay.
to testify and then circle back around. But in a normal proceeding, we wouldn't swap witnesses back and forth between questions. So I'm gonna ask that the city representative come on back up. And if you can't answer a question and that has to be moved on to another party, we can address that when we address the next witness.
So, I mean, just if I may add, typically, private streets are pretty typical in developments, and gated communities and private streets go together quite a bit. The city's codes would still apply to those, and there still would be, if there was a reason for the city to have to access that property, through the police department, if that's the way I don't think that it would have to come to that, but the police department does have access anytime that it needs to access the site to make sure that things are up to your health and safety codes and nuisance codes.
Procedurally, can't we include that as part of the PUD approval?
Certainly. Mm-hmm. So you just have to finesse that at the end, I guess, as to what you want, what the PUD conditions would say, and we can help you with that, certainly.
And I had a couple of questions, because the original application, if I recall, was a plan where there were 126 basic units, but they were broken down into individual units, and there looked like there was some kind of a potential HOA for that development.
So initially, for the last, not for this 126 units, for those 2014 and 2015 approvals, there were 78 single-family properties. Then you would have fee simple sales, and those would be platted. But because this is rental, it's one lot, and so it's not platted. We call it like it's a commercial type of standard. Like it's like a site plan that goes in for commercial. It's just one. When you look at the property appraiser's data, it's one parcel versus a lot of different parcels.
My concern just in general real estate is, normally if you have one building, and it's an apartment building, you would have one owner and just different units. Here, it kind of seems like there's duplexes that are almost like separate units that are kind of sprawled out on the property, but still like an apartment with one owner owning all those properties, which is unusual from what I can tell looking at some of these. Normally, if it's parceled out like this, it would actually be parceled out for a unit and not one owner for all the units.
So you'll see that this is not parceled out. You actually just see building footprints. So it's one parcel with building, just like you would in a apartment complex. There'd be those footprints, and maybe the applicant could speak more to what that looks like. But typically, it's just one parcel with a lot of buildings, as opposed to a lot of buildings with a lot of lots. And that's a single family fee simple type of ownership, whereas this is one owner who manages and.
It's consistent with an apartment.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's that type of ownership scheme.
Because one of the other concerns I had is, really as a city, as the council, we have to look at these areas as they develop and make sure it's consistent with what the rest of the city is, how it's developed. And most of the city, particularly when you're that close to the waterfront, are single-family homes. And I think that percentage-wise, rentals within the community were probably maybe 80 to 90% non-rental. Most people are single-family residents. So, I saw your plan. You said it was kind of consistent with the area, but I don't know if I agreed with that in that sense. Because it doesn't seem like the rest of the area there is rentals. And I didn't know if you looked around to see that aspect of it or that.
Well, we typically don't look at the ownership rental. We look at more of the structure. We look at that structure. We look at the impacts of how many units are being provided. Your comprehensive plan directs staff to look for a range and variety of housing types to suit the needs of all the people within your community, both today and tomorrow in the future. So one of the growing owners or demand is for rental properties for people who may not have the wherewithal to get a mortgage right away, or maybe somebody who wants to come and stay for a certain amount of time during the year. I mean, there are just lots of different scenarios where people would prefer to rent versus own. And, but this is market rate, so, you know, I would gather that the prices would, you know, maybe those people could move into single family if they wanted to, you know, it's just a preference, it's a preference.
No, I understand that, and then the other thing I looked at, that it looks like that there were 126 units from what I can tell by looking at the actual plan itself.
There are, it's up to 126, so not a unit more, but they could do less. But they have it laid out to where if you count those footprints, you'll see 126 units on that site plan, or that concept plan.
And then the other thing that I noted is it looked like there was almost a little bit of a variance in terms of space between buildings.
So it's pretty typical with a planned unit development that there is some adjustment. I mean, this is a really unique site, it has a lot of wetlands, it's got that interior wetlands on the site. It also has a road network that's already been built. So they're really working with a very constrained space, and so they laid this out, and of course the applicant will tell you more of the reasons behind but I'm telling you that as far as what I know is that for planned unit development typically is a bit of they would just be asking for this. They would come in with a site plan and use the zoning that they had right now if they wanted to go ahead and build that many units, because they can do quite a bit more units under the R3. But I guess with their configuration, they've penciled it out, and this is what they understand to be marketable. And that was the reason for their request. So, but it's typical with a PUD that there is some adjustment. Otherwise, they would just come in with the R3 and maximize their units.
Thank you. That's the question that I have.
Since there's not going to be an HOA and it's going to be wholly owned by one, is the owner then responsible for all the maintenance, the outside appearance, the shrubs, the hedges? Is that maintained, or is that turned over to renters?
No, and the applicant will be able to tell you, but I've sat through enough of the past presentations that the owner of the property, and it's also outlined in the conditions of approval, would be responsible for the maintenance of the site, keeping things up to code and of course consistent with what their customers would want to see as well.
All right, and then also you note fair market rate for rent. How do you determine that fair market rate?
Well, again, that would be more of a real estate related question for the applicant, but there's a lot of, I guess, comparable, you know, like there's comparable sales, there's probably like comparable rents as well. So please save that question for the applicant, because he'll do better justice to it than I could.
And some of the other questions that I had, it looked like that there were amenities that they were looking to build, a clubhouse. It looked like there was a pool in the schematics. Was there any additional parking? A lot of places that build these types of units, they'll have around the clubhouse additional parking for visitors and for other folks. Because and my concern is you have 126 units, and on a holiday, if everybody has 4 or 5 people that stop over, you know, it becomes a problem in terms of parking. And I didn't know if that was addressed within the plan.
I believe that there are multiple parking spaces per unit, but I don't see any parking spaces at the clubhouse, but that could be just the detail that's not there. But if you feel that there's some parking that needs to be associated with that, then, well, we can ask the applicant, of course.
Right.
But that could be something that
I was just asking. I was concerned that, you know, that at some point you have too many cars in there, not enough parking. That's an issue.
Yeah, I guess it would be interesting to map out as like what's the walking distance from the most distant, you know, and you know, if people would just have people park at their home and then they'd walk to the swimming pool.
I think that's all the questions that I had in terms of consider cross-examination. Yes. Anything else?
I have a question. You had listed that there would be 2 in and out egress.
Mm-hmm.
This drawing shows 1 in and out egress and
One on Broadway.
1 exit.
It's in and out on Broadway.
On Broadway.
That says exit only, gated emergency lock box.
So the conditions of approval that we've developed since reviewing this plan indicates that they will have 2 full access points. So that when the applicant first came in, the development plan only showed a partial access point.
So
on
this
Broad.
is an error on this drawing?
It's not an error, it's just it will be updated when they, after all of this, they'll update that before they come in for their next round of site approvals. But the conditions of approval require that they have 2 full access points. And that was a requirement of your fire department and the police department. So that was a condition that came about after we reviewed this plan.
I have a big concern about the parking in the area. We have a development here now that has parking issues because there's just not, the roads are not wide enough. If these people do have company, will they be parking on the streets? Will these streets accommodate street parking for visitors at the homes?
Well, let's ask the applicant. I don't have the dimensions of the street width, but that would be telling as to if streets or cars could do parallel parking, sort of like impromptu sort of parking like you have in neighborhoods. I don't know if you require that if you allow that in your other city neighborhoods. Pretty typical in places that are outside Pasco County, I guess. Where I live, during the parade and things, people just pack the streets, but pretty much it's just a little car here and there, and it's not a big deal. But the issue is the width of the street and whether it would allow for cars to get by if there was somebody parking out there.
Well, I'm also concerned about emergency equipment. If somebody had to go in here and we have parking on the streets and our fire truck can't get through because of this parking, I see this more in another development that we have, that I'm really concerned that we can get emergency equipment back there if the roads are not wide enough.
Well, it's certainly something that because this is a rental development, there would be a property manager for them to enforce a requirement. So we could say that it looks as though the streets are not wide enough to accommodate some on-street parking from time to time, then perhaps that would be a condition that the owner of the development would enforce that. And you have a little bit more control sometimes when you're the rental owner versus just single-family houses with everybody's their own owner. And
So each one of these units is going to have 2 parking spaces?
2 parking spaces. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the overflow would be like friends and family coming to visit.
Right, right. But when the applicant stands up, please ask the question, because just to make sure that I'm correct in my assumption of.
I'm sure he'll take care of that.
He will. Thank you.
I have some questions. Looking at the site plan, there's a number of dead-end streets. Has fire reviewed this and approved this
Yes,
plan?
this plan has been reviewed by the Development Review Committee, which includes police and fire.
And they had no comments on?
Their comment was that they needed to have the ability to access the site, and then also people had to have multiple ways of getting out of the site if needed. But the cul-de-sacs or the dead ends were not an issue.
Okay. How many square feet are the units?
I don't remember exactly, but the applicant will be able to fill you in.
Because that's supposed to be on the site plan.
Not necessarily.
According to PUD, it is. It says it right here.
It says
That the total square footage of the buildings is supposed to be presented on the site plan and all building usages.
Oh, in the land development code?
In the PUD code.
Oh, in the land development, okay,
Yeah.
in land development code. It may be on there. From memory, I do not remember exactly, so I don't want to get it wrong.
Okay. I'm just trying to establish market rates, and market rates are usually done by size of the unit.
Well, we do know it's their 3-bedroom, I think two baths, I guess what it was, but the applicant will know what the square footages that they're going to be offering will be.
The traffic study, you mentioned that there's 3 stacking off of what I assume to be Washington Street is what you were referring to as far as the 3-car stack
Yes,
coming
where
off?
you see the arrow to the west, there's the little arrow there on Washington Street. You'll see the room there is on site for 3 cars to stack as they enter the development.
Is there any queuing off of Broadway?
There is, I believe that there is a decel lane, no, not for Broadway, I'm sorry, no. Broadway's more of a secondary full access, but no, there's no queuing off of that.
So there's no queuing, no decel lanes, no left turn lanes off of Broadway?
It really is, it's very much of a secondary access. So the primary access is off of Washington Street. Broadway would probably be, like, it's mostly for emergencies, but people could use it at any time. There really isn't a traffic issue on Broadway. I suspect that there aren't a lot of people that are using it at that point, so.
Well, do we know there's no traffic issue? Was that included in the updated traffic study?
That's a local street, so typically we just look at more of the collector streets or higher. So they did only traffic counts on Washington Street.
Is there a left turn lane either present or suggested off of Washington Street into the queue?
There is not.
Was there a suggestion of one in the most recent traffic study or no? The traffic engineer did? That I haven't seen yet?
You'll have to ask. I just received it myself today as I was flying out the door, so I put together the basic data that paralleled to what I put together, and so we'll have to see. I suspect that there is no additional improvement to address traffic because traffic does not seem to be an issue per the analysis. There's plenty of capacity on Washington Street, and the number of peak hour trips is it's pretty minimal at the 70 to, I think it was 75 unit or 75 trips in the PM peak hour.
Part of the PUD application is that there has to be a confirmation that the total building coverage does not exceed 30% of the land. Have we done that calculation and confirmed it?
Yes, we did, and there's a lot of wetlands on this site, so yeah, we did do that calculation.
But that's also per phase too.
Per phase?
Is that per phase or, and I guess that's a question probably for
Well,
Jim as much as anybody.
So essentially, the phase 2 is a phase 2 because the permitting for phase 1 is in place. That SwiftMud environmental resource permit is in place, and they can move, once they get their site plan approvals from the city, they can move forward. Site, or phase 2, because it's a recent acquisition, is going into permitting, or maybe in permitting right now. So they didn't want to hold up on phase 1, waiting for phase 2 permits. So
Agreed,
that's only.
but it's a separate parcel though, so I just don't know if it counts as a separate parcel as part of the PUD.
There'll be a unity of title for.
Oh, there'll be a unity of title
Yes, it
between
will all
the
be
two parcels. Okay.
one parcel. Mhm.
Is the entire property fenced, or is it just facing either Broadway or Washington, or is the intent to do a fully fenced in?
The fencing is a perimeter fencing, but it cannot be along the wetlands. So it will be only for non-wetland areas. So essentially what you see along, you can see where the wetland, it's the white area, encroaches the development area. So you'll see on Broadway where the gray is, it would pick up there, run the entire distance of Washington, go along the office, what's the MARS, or what's the acronym? PAR. The PAR development, and then up along the residential areas to the very north. But it would stop at the wetlands because.
So it would basically halfway down Broadway, more or less.
Yes.
And then for the extent of Washington that they have adjoining property to Washington.
Yes, and initially, the fencing was going to be provided on Washington, but in response to the Planning and Zoning Board request, that perimeter fencing has been extended to all perimeter except for the wetland areas, which would not be allowed by SwiftMud, I'm pretty sure.
And there are fully automatic gates that are at the entrances and exits. Is that a guard shack or just a automatic gate?
I believe it's going to be some sort of a, code or key fob or something that, but I don't believe a guard shack, but you can ask the applicant for clarification.
That's all I had for right now.
Great, thank you.
And the other thing, I guess, one of the things I was kind of driving at is the original plan, the way that it was broken up, we had different parcels with different units, kind of gave the freedom of the owner to actually sell off if he wanted to sell units and people could actually own them and live in them. The way that it's established now, there would always just be rentals the way that they're set up. There'd really be no opportunity for people to ever buy there. Is that the intent?
They would have to plat them and draw some lines and make them fee simple lots in order to do that. So that would require a process to do that.
Correct.
If it was physically possible.
I was trying to figure out, what was the change? Do you know what prompted the change from where it was originally, I don't know if you know this, I may be asking the wrong person, but where you originally had different parcels for each, in essence, each building, or more parcels, so they're parceled out, would give the owner the freedom to sell these, so you would have homeowners or duplex owners or whatever, as opposed to just rentals. Do you know why or how that changed?
I don't. I can't tell
Okay.
you. Mm-mm.
And that was one of the things I wanted to ask, but I think I'm going to save that question for Carlos.
Please, yes, that'd be great.
Okay. And I think that's all that I had in terms of questions for you.
Okay, and I'll leave this clicker up here if anybody needs it. Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Certainly.
Okay. The differences in the setbacks and the distances between the homes and stuff like that, can you explain to the public why we have these differences, like 20 feet for the front yard for the PUD and 25 feet for something else? And is this in compliance with our code?
So what you see are the current standards for the R3 and the C1, so that's what's on your books today, but they're asking for a rezoning to planned unit development. And a planned unit development by nature allows some flexibility. So there's an opportunity for innovative, we say it's for innovative development types, things that would, help fulfill a community need. For instance, if maybe you don't have a lot of rental properties within the city, but maybe that is something that's in demand in the city. So it's just a way for your code not to hold up anything that might be wanted, a desirable thing in the community. And housing right now across our entire region and the state, there is a big housing crisis for people trying to be able to find housing that they can afford. And there's just really not a lot out there that's available for under $200,000, or there's very, very small amounts of properties. So, and for many, many reasons, people decide to rent over ownership, and so it's just providing a variety and choice within your housing market in the city. And so we work with the developer to say, if you want this, then it's a negotiation, really.
So what you're saying is the PUD allows them to add more buildings by decreasing the distances because that's allowable under this zoning change?
Well, I believe that in the past with the other approvals that they also had that same 10-foot separation. So they've been approved 3 times in the past for that same 10-foot separation. It's just, and also they built those development pads with the building set layout in mind. And so they're really working with, as I said, in a constrained development site where they can only put units on so many places, and they've worked out the numbers to where it works for them. So I would ask you to ask that question again, sorry, to the applicant, to get in their head as to what was their rationale. But we felt that it was acceptable. It's been approved, like I said, 3 times in the, I believe 3 times in the past in that regard. So we continued with it.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. The next person I wanted to invite for testimony, Carlos, come on up.
Your Honor, matter of protocol, the city has offered a document Okay, you need to rule on that,
Okay. The,
whether you want to accept it as part of the record.
can you identify the document just for the
The
record?
the documents as so identified by Tammy Varana is a transportation report.
Correct, okay. I wanted to know if there's any objection to accepting that transportation document into the record at this time.
Well, I think it's very pertinent to what we're talking about in terms of circulation and et cetera. So, you know, I think it's very important that we at least see it.
I do too, so I'd like to accept it so for consideration.
I accept.
Okay. So can we let the record reflect that we've accepted that document into the record?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Carlos Yepes, 6654 78th Avenue, North Pinellas Park. I'm the owner of the property and the developer and the builder. I want to maybe give you a little brief history with regards to your question about why we're doing what we're doing. So this property is on R3. It's on multifamily today. We could come in and build 240, 250 units here today by just putting 3-story buildings, no approval necessary, just file our plan with the city and go build it. That's the current plan, the current zoning allowance. We thought it was a little too much to do here. Trying to blend a little better with the neighborhood, have single-story buildings. So we went back to this plan. This is like a villa concept. We own all of them, we control all of them. With regards to cars on the road, our leases will have a condition that if the owner doesn't move it, we move it, and we charge them for it. We'll be faster than code enforcement, because they don't have a choice with us. We will have property management on site, and with regards to the maintenance, we are responsible for entirely every piece of the property. We will be maintaining the buildings. Tenants do nothing except they pay us rent. We maintain the units, we paint them, we clean them, we clean the streets, maintain the sewers, maintain the water lines. We have water meters from the city, master meters. We have sub-meters in each unit to control the water usage. The access to the property is 2 gated entries. The second entry will be a control entry, like a garage door opener, where you press your button in your car. That second gate will be open by the time you get to the gate.
I'm sorry, the one on Broadway,
Yes, correct. So you don't need a stack in there. It's primarily, some people will use it, some people will not. You
It's
can't
no
tell
visitor.
them. You can't tell them not to use it. So, but they'll be allowed, and some people will use it.
No visitor though, correct?
No visitors will be coming that way. So when we have visitors in these communities types, we have a control device that they will answer. Someone will answer if they can't get in, and they'll be able to turn around and go back. So we'll have enough distance in there to allow for queuing. In regards to the number of units, I think by having 126 units, we have cut the traffic demand in half. Even though Washington Street, when we were at the public hearing at the plan and zoning, a traffic study is not required for the application, so we didn't do one. But we thought it would be good to have the actual facts instead of people saying there's too much traffic, So let's see what it is. So we pay for the traffic study to go do the counts and find out what the demand is and what an impact into the road will be. As you can see, it's very minimal. The road has a lot of capacity yet. Our units in the marketplace has been a demand for the people who used to rent 1 bedroom are renting 2 bedrooms because they're working from home. So the second bedroom becomes the office. The 2-bedroom people are renting 3 bedrooms. Husband and wife, or girlfriend and boyfriend, and they both don't want to work out of 1 bedroom, they'll go work out of the extra bedroom. So not necessarily all the units will be used as sleeping rooms. We will have a clubhouse. The clubhouse will have parking. The streets are wide enough for a car to be there and someone pass you. An emergency vehicle will be able to pass you. So that's not an issue. Here, we're going to maintain everything inside the community. We're eager to build this project. We're ready to go. We hope to start construction, if this approval is done, sometime in the next 45 days. What we would like to do. I'm here to answer any questions you all may have.
I had a question.
Yes, sir.
I asked earlier about the fair market rate for rents, and the reason I was asking
Yeah,
If you're not full to capacity, I think some people have fears that the rents will drop, and then you'll start getting a more transient people coming and going in and out, and turning that into a different kind of community than we want. So that's why I want to know, where are you going to get your rates from, that we don't see these rates dropping and then the high turnover you typically get with low rate renters?
Well, the market determines those rents. It's like if you want to buy something that is too much of it, the price drops. There is very little, the price rises. We are not bound by what a lot of other communities are bound by, which will be an affordable product that has to be maximum 30% of the average area income, to where the person cannot spend more than 30% of their income in housing. It's a different project. This is not a housing assisted project. This is a market rent, and that's how they are referred to. The rents are determined by what's in the market at the time when you finish. If I tell you a rent today, it may be different the day we open, because it is the market. We're not geared here. We're not getting any government assistance to build this project. It's going to cost us $25 million to do this, and we're going to do it out of pocket and build it. We're not asking for anything different, and we're going to go out and build it. If we decide to drop the rent to regeneration revenue, that's probably an option, but it's a very temporary option. You couldn't survive doing that.
And what capacity do you have to maintain to keep those units filled in your estimate?
Well, typically the communities like this run in the 90s, 94 to 97% in most communities. And today is really an unusual time. A lot of the units just don't have any space. They're full.
I understand that
Yeah,
the times
so-
change and then the reverse
Right, but
falls
even
into
in
place.
normal conditions, when we do the projections for this type of projects across the state, we will run in the 96, 97%.
Yeah, I think some of the people concerned are that the problem is going to be that the rents will become low to fill the capacity, and then they will have a transient type place where people are coming and going and not a stable neighborhood. And that's what I think you have to address to
Right.
the people,
Right.
not to us, because they have those concerns.
Right, if we rent for less than 7 months, we have to charge sales tax on the rent. So that rent becomes higher yet. So all our leases will be for a year. We're not gonna do short-term rentals. Some people are doing it in the city. In a lot of cases, you have a lot of houses that are in B&B.
Yeah, but we don't have 126 in one area.
No, we don't. But you also don't have a control environment where we have a management company on top of them every day, seeing what's going on, who's coming in. It's a control environment. It's a gated community. So they have a clubhouse. They can come to the clubhouse. They have parking there. The idea is for people to walk in the neighborhood and mingle with other people. You don't necessarily want to get in your car. But we do have parking for them if they wanted to, or for the guests. So I think this is a great addition to the neighborhood. The site has been sitting empty here for many years. We bought it 8 years ago. It was 192 townhouses that was going to be built. And we thought it was too much, so we reduced it.
Again, that's where I think the concerns lay between rentals and ownership. There's a lot more, tends to be pride of ownership and different things happen. And I think they're concerned about if things slow down, the rents will drop, and then it'll become a transient rental place with people going in and out.
Well, I think it's a risk we got to take in life. Look at the community down the street that is beautiful. And it's an older community that is for rent. Those rents are subsidized. They are restricted, I should say, because they got financing subsidized. But when you invest in this much money in a property, you want to make sure that things are staying very neat, very clean, and then you'll get the residents. We're not trying to get a Section 8 project here. This is not that type of project.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question. One of the things that that I was going to ask you is, during an application process, do you guys generally do background checks on?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yeah.
And can you tell us what that would normally entail?
Yeah, the person gives us their criminal records. Well, we check. They give us the grant, the permission to check the criminal records, and for also the credit to move in, we require a deposit, security deposit, and a background check for each and every person that rents and works for us.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You must have some kind of ballpark figure in mind for your rentals.
We do.
Can we be privy to just an idea of what you're
We
asking for?
think this rentals are gonna be somewhere in the 1350 range.
Per month?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
To
And-
1400. We think that the actual market today is somewhere around 1450, 1475. We're thinking that depends on the market. Ideally, we'd like to get 1500.
Mhm.
We'll see if we get there. I think when people realize how pretty it is inside and what all the amenities they're getting, we'll probably get it. And we'll be patient.
And did you have a square footage on these?
Yes,
units?
they're 1,174 square feet
Per unit,
per unit, yes. Single level.
per apartment?
Yes.
So the building's going to be two?
Two of them together,
will
correct.
be-
Mhm.
Will be a total of?
It will be 12, 774 times 2. 1350.
Okay.
1349, yeah.
So two bedroom, two bath?
They're all going to be threes. Is
Three?
because it's just we have experience in the marketplace this need for the additional office in the house,
Oh, I understand.
and it's going to become the new normal. We see it in other communities that we're doing a need for that. The 2-bedroom guys are going to a 3-bedroom. Just for that reason, because they can't work with their girlfriend or their wife in the same living room or the same kitchen all day.
Oh,
And they get
makes sense.
interrupted, they got kids, so they get in an office. Like, we're building some houses, normal houses, we're building 4 bedrooms with an office.
You're building
Yeah.
4 bedrooms?
No,
Not
here, no, here. Oh, here, in other communities,
This is
yeah.
3 bedroom,
Yeah, this
2
is 2
bath.
But I'm saying in other communities, we're actually building 4 bedrooms and an office on top of that.
Open parking?
Open parking, yes.
I had the privilege of looking for a villa for a family member of mine, so I have been touring them in the last couple of weeks myself.
Good.
So if they're anything like some of the things that I have seen, some of them are actually beautiful and just a source of pride for the community that they sit in. And I think that's what we were wanting in this area, so.
Well, that's what we want also. You know, we're going to build a very nice product, and we're spending a substantial amount of money on this property to do this. We're looking for the long term.
Are they going to be cracker box type things, or do you have individual styles for the units so that they don't look like?
We're working in, the colors will be different on the outside. We have a pattern that we will use. We're gearing towards the Key West kind of look of the outside. And right now, actually, we just had a meeting with the interior designer yesterday on how to make them different, how to make it look different. When you walk down the street, you see 10 buildings, but they all don't look alike.
That's what,
Yeah.
that's a concern, because
Right,
when they
that's-
start looking like they're,
Like tract
sterile.
housing, no, we want the opposite. We're gonna have some shutters on the outside and the elevations. You saw, Tammy brought some elevations here for you. We'll have some Bahama shutters. Others will have shutters up against the wall, trying to create something different as you drive down the road.
When I was reading through some of this, I was concerned about the flooding issues, because
Mhm.
some of the surrounding neighborhoods have some major issues with flooding, and I was wondering how this is going to affect them.
Well, let me address that. We have an actual SWIFMA permit already in place. The facilities are already in today, they're already built. I have my drainage engineer, who happens to be here, a civil engineer, that brought him with me today to speak in that issue if you needed to. He walked the entire site and sees there are some ditches that are owned by Pasco County that is not maintaining and creating flooding down from us, not
Right.
at our location, just on the path of the water. We discussed that with some of the residents that were to the west of us, to the east of us, at the last meeting. So we're already built. We're done. We're actually going to have less impervious than we would have had before with 192 units.
Mhm.
We're going to be more concrete.
Mhm.
So we're going to do 126 now.
Thank you.
Going back to the parking issue, right now it looks like you have 2 open space parking per unit,
Yes, correct.
and there's no on-street parking will be permitted, or?
No, you could park a car in the car like any neighborhood. You can park a car and someone can go by you, because it's not necessarily a collector road that you have hundreds of cars going by. It's like in any neighborhood, somebody just parks in front of your house, goes and knocks on the door. No different. But we do have a clubhouse where there is some additional parking.
And,
That parking,
Go ahead.
that parking is at both sides of the street.
Well, depends on the direction of the car. If you're going to the house that is on this side, you're gonna park.
But technically, what you're saying is that they can park on both sides of the street.
They should. I mean, they could. It's just like any neighborhood. Your house is on the left or the right. So somebody's gonna park on one side or the other.
well, it appears that the roads are 20 foot wide by my rough scaling.
Yeah, yeah.
So the concern I had is, again, back to fire, if you have one car stacked here, one car stacked here, one car stacked here, he's never gonna get by
Yeah.
with his shiny new fire truck.
Believe me, he'll go over the sidewalks and go over if there's a fire to get there. Believe me, and we're gonna be responsible to fix it. So if that happens, that's what he's gonna do. But in most neighborhoods that we build like this, it never becomes an issue.
The units are being rented annually?
Yes, yeah.
Furnished or unfurnished?
Unfurnished.
Unfurnished. And just a point of clarification, this is the zoning hearing, so we're gonna have a separate PD hearing on the development itself, or is that a?
I believe
Is-
it's the same ordinance, isn't it?
I'm not sure I understand. Separate PD?
Well, this is the zoning hearing to allow for a PUD. Is there a separate hearing on the development itself for approval, or once we go through and approve the zoning, then it's full approval?
I thought it
I was
all
going to
at
say
once.
there'd be a site plan approval, well, there's a process for that with regard to the site plan approval. If the site plan meets the basic tenets of the PUD plan, you're.
And that's an executive, actually, I believe that's an executive approval on the site plan, as long as it meets the tenets of the PUD, correct?
I'd have to check, but I thought the site plan, that the formal final site plan comes to council, but I believe so, correct?
Okay.
But I guess, let me add to that if that final site plan comes to council for review, if it meets the basic tenets of what you're approving here
Then it's
today,
approved.
you'll have to approve.
It's
If
deemed
not-
approved, yes.
Consent
It's deemed,
agenda.
well, you could say no to it, but.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
essentially a consent agenda.
I don't want you to use
Right.
that as
Right.
well, I got to take a bite at this apple.
What I'm saying is that there's no approval of the elevations or the design inherent in the development itself.
Correct. I think what you're trying to express is the conditions of approval. This is going to be in the PUD. The PUD zoning becomes our zoning, and we can't do anything else except that.
Correct. Where I'm gearing towards is right now, the elevations presented, the square footage wasn't presented. If we accept this today, we're essentially accepting the elevations, the buildings, the square footage, whatever it is, and then it goes through. As long as the site plan meets the conditions of the PUD, there's no step further from a council standpoint.
Correct.
I just want to make sure.
Correct. And the variances, there's variances that are baked in there in terms of
Yeah,
distance.
yes,
Correct.
that-
Yeah,
yes.
you could call them that, but
Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
that's correct. And I'd like to add one other thing, since there's been some comments. We're going to have, you're going to rent for a year.
Mhm.
Well, that has no legal significance here.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Okay, as long as you know.
Yeah.
Because I'd
He
say.
can can rent it month to month, we can't
You're just
say-
asking him what his
Right.
intent
Correct.
is. Okay, thank you. Just, I want to make sure everybody's on the same page.
You're absolutely correct. What you approve here tonight is what we got to build.
Correct.
If we don't build it in 180 days, we're back to square one. We got to come back here.
Start building it.
Right. Or if we want to make a modification, we got to come back here.
If you want to make the modification,
Yes.
yes. If we
So-
want to put any requirements on that, we have to do it tonight.
Yes.
Essentially.
Tonight, tell me what you want. If there's anything else here that we haven't.
Correct. So if we want a larger clubhouse or wider streets or whatever the case may be, and I'm making stuff up
Yeah.
right now, you may have a heart attack to that.
I will have a heart attack because we don't have any room.
I know, but I'm just saying we have to make any requirements now. There's no
Yeah.
second chance for requirements or criteria to this.
Let me tell you what I think we gave up the wider road. We decided to have sidewalks instead on both sides.
Are they going to be fully lighted sidewalks?
Yeah, we'll have streetlights.
Streetlights all the way through?
And they'll be underground also, no overhead powers.
No overhead power lights? Okay.
Yeah, and then we pay for that bill too.
The,
It's not a city bill.
Are the units individually metered? Just out of curiosity.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody
Okay,
has
so
their
they'll
own
pay their
meter.
own electric.
They pay their own electric, and we have sub-meters, electric sub-meters for the water consumption. So a tenant gets a bill for the water that they consume And we can't be in the utility business, we're just charging what it costs us.
Well, let me clarify. Is there going to be a master unit coming in for the whole area, or is it going to be an individual unit or meter on each building?
There are 2 master meters already installed on the property today. They're there, they're functioning, they're already, the water system is in the spray, it's already done. The lift station is there, the sewer lines are there. We just gotta do the laterals. But the individual tenant gets an electric bill and he gets a water bill that he reimburses us for what he consumed, because we'll monitor that in each individual unit with an electronic meter.
This is a different issue from you, but I would think that, aren't we past the days of a master meter when we normally go to an individual meter on each unit?
Well, when it's a fee simple units, you do. When there is like a townhouse project with a condo plot, you do individual.
Like you originally applied
right.
for.
Yeah, the difference is that I can't shut their water off if they don't pay the water. You can. That's the difference, the big difference. And we're not in the utility business. We're only doing it if it's a matter of convenience. The system is already in place. So we have 2 big master meters. We pay the bill whether the tenant pays us or not.
Okay.
Did I answer all the questions?
Can I ask one more question?
You can ask as many as you like.
Okay, thank you. If this was not what you chose to do, and you chose to go with the 250 units on the R3, and you let this expire, then you could go back to putting 250 units in if you choose?
You could do that.
No, you could
well, no,
do
I
that.
don't want to do that. No.
You don't want to do
Right.
that,
No, I
but
don't.
you could, if you allowed this to expire in 180 days, you could come back and say, okay, I'm going to put 250 units in here now.
I could. That's absolutely correct.
You
yes,
legally can come back and say that.
absolutely, yes. But we have had that right for 8 years. I've not wanted to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have owned this property since 2000.
I was here when you came back in the
Right.
last time.
Yeah, we originally were going to build some single-family homes here. And
78 of them.
Yeah, the market was crashing and doing some things, and the builders were getting scared. The sales were not happening in this market, and they were.
Oh, I know.
So,
I remember.
So
when it
we said,
happened.
forget it. Just kill it. Let's wait, and now is the time.
But your choice is to go with a lesser number of units and
Yes.
make a more desirable place to live than to have 250 apartments in there.
Correct. Yeah, we're building the same product
If
through
you
the
were to
different
build
counties.
250 units in there, would they be 3-story with underground?
It will have to be 3 stories. The code allows it to go 3 stories.
Okay.
The R3 allows us to go build 3 stories. In fact, I believe I sent a plan to the city showing, they wanted to see what it would look like. We did. We had a plan just to show them.
Well,
But-
I'm just saying, I'm just curious as to what you could do if we chose not to approve this. And
Right.
you could come in tomorrow and say, well, I'm going to build 250 units.
Well, I may not do it, but I will probably sell it for someone else to do it. I chose
That would
not
be-
to do it.
Yeah, I
Right,
know, I'm not
right.
pointing a
It's-
finger at you, I'm just saying that this is the possibility.
It's
if
a
we did
right.
not.
It's a right that we have to do. A
Yes,
right, a given
that's all I
right.
wanted
It's
to
an
clarify.
entitlement that we have today. If I don't choose to build it, it's because it's a big financial risk. If I go to 140 units, it's $50 million. I'd rather split the risk and do 2 of these projects. So I would sell it to somebody else and let them build it.
Exactly.
And get the permit and they go build it.
Mhm.
It's not what I want to do. I would have sold the land a long time ago.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I agree, but this would have been
Right,
an
right.
alternative if you had chosen to do
Yes,
that.
yes, and it is something that could be done, but I would really have invested a tremendous amount of time in this product, trying to make it very friendly, very single level, because we have people in this community that are much older.
I think this
Yeah.
is a much more
Yeah.
desirable
Yeah.
community to be putting in this particular area
Right.
as opposed to 250 units of
Right.
3-story buildings.
Correct. In that market, you typically cater to a lot younger, the 3-story people.
So this
Not
is-
a lot of people are going to walk 3 stories.
So you're assuming that this is going to be the more stable, upper working class type of person?
We think we're going to have a mixture, primarily working people, but we're going to have a mixture of retired people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because being a single level. And it
Right.
seems to be like a community in Sarasota that just opened up similar to this. Their rents are a lot more money because it's Sarasota, but it's 55 and over. So almost identical product to what we're doing.
Yeah,
But we don't want to be 55 and over only. We want to have a mixture.
okay. What made you choose that?
Which we think is a bigger range. The market is bigger to do that. You have people who are working, who come here temporarily to work for the transfer. They need to be here only a year. They don't want to buy. Today, the millennials don't want to buy. They want to rent. They're very movable.
And the retirement people want to be on one story,
Yep.
no stairs.
So that's what we're doing. That's the reason.
Okay.
How big is the
Thank you for
clubhouse?
clarifying that for me.
How big is the clubhouse?
The square footage of the clubhouse, I think we're 1,400 feet, Josh? I think so. I think it's 1,400 square feet. We put a little workout room in there. We created a nicer area outside on the pool area, and because we think that's what people are mostly going to use. We have a little management office inside the clubhouse. We also have a little maintenance room in the back for our maintenance man. We'll have a maintenance man on site with a golf cart to do whatever repairs need to be done.
So it looks like the amenities portion of this is roughly 700 square feet of this clubhouse?
Probably closer to 1,000 because it's open. It's not necessarily divided. It's one big room. The only division is the maintenance room that is in the back that we want to keep any spare parts, anything that we want to keep it away from people seeing that. So we put it in the back of the unit. That is a clubhouse. There we go. So you can see the floor plan. We have offices. You have a little workout room. We actually, in our interior design plan today, we're thinking about getting rid of those three chairs that are in the middle and open all that all together. So that's why I said it was open. But it's a moving plan right now, interior wise. But the idea is to see the pool from there.
I'm thinking from a rent standpoint that as usual, the better the amenities, the higher the rents, and that scenario. So the clubhouse should be something a little more special to the development, trying to target higher rents.
Yeah, it's a balance. It's a balance. You're right. Any other questions?
I did. I can tell you what my concerns are because I'd rather talk to you since you've had this investment and you've spent all this time. I'm really concerned about the variances. There's a reason that we've always developed land and we have space between folks and we have space between buildings and we have wide enough roads and it's for not just emergency vehicles, but obviously having all these folks living on top of each other may not be the most ideal situation in terms of the spacing itself. Is there any way to build potentially fewer units so you have the spacing requirements that we already had in the past in terms of, I think they were from 20 to 25 or there was about a 5-foot variance, I think, between some of those that were different.
I can eliminate one sidewalk on one side and just make only one sidewalk active on one side and the road gets wider. But we think it's a much better product to have the two sidewalks as people are going to walk here more than drive inside the community. That was the actual decision how we arrive at that. If you want me to make it wider, I'll just eliminate the 4-foot road. Okay. But I think it's a mistake.
No, I was just asking because that's one of the concerns that I had.
Right.
It seems,
I understand.
And I understand the issue with this property because I'm familiar with the property. I've been in the city long enough to know that a lot of that property floods and it's just wetlands, which is great for where you have your drainage and that project where I'm sure he's there. But you have probably the conglomeration of people in one area of that acreage. And that's the concern that I have.
Well, keep in mind, this is 35 acres of property. And we have wetlands in the middle, and we have built all around. For example, in the very back of this property, the vegetation is so mature, so beautiful. We're trying to keep as much as we can of that vegetation, because that's the beauty. But for us to start, if we need to spread the buildings and go build, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be sitting here. We have worked this plan to death to get, and we narrow it down to 2 little issues, 2.5 feet on each side is really what we're asking from your code. On phase 1. On phase 2, we don't even need it because it's allowed. And on the front setback and the rear setback, whether we move the building up and down is really the only other variance that you are granting today, but it's just because we wanted to give him more backyard instead of more front yard. That was the idea behind.
Okay.
For, and I'm going to harp on this on-street parking because I can't get it out of my head. I still have a lot of concerns, again, like I mentioned with fire trucks, fire access, and I know you said they'll drive over the yards, but that damages their truck, it damages your yard, and it's not really practical. I mean, obviously, well, do we have an ordinance of no on-street parking?
Well, this is private property. Remember that.
Well, correct,
And-
but
yeah.
we were also talking that you'd apply by the codes of
Right.
the.
But if you look at your neighborhoods today, to a lot of the neighborhoods, they park on the street.
Well, that's what, not in our city.
Yeah.
That's why we have the ordinance for no on-street parking. And that's,
But only the guest. If a guest comes to your house, they park on the street today in your city, they get a ticket.
well,
That's really what's going to happen.
they should. Let me
Okay.
put it that way.
Okay. But we have provided parking in front of each unit. Each unit has 2 parking spaces for them, and maybe a little more than there. Right?
Well,
But-
here's my concern. We have a 3-bedroom unit, and I know you're targeting, I have 3 driving age people, 1 in each bedroom.
Yeah.
How many cars is that? That's 3 cars.
True.
You provided parking for 2, now you have a permanent on-street parking. Let's say 50% of that or 30% of that. Or you have families splitting the rent, something of that nature, which is not unheard of. I'm worried that the car parking need is beyond the 2 spots that we're providing. So how do we address that?
I'll tell you, most of our multifamily developments across the state are 1.7 maximum usage of parking spaces per unit. 1.7, we're providing 2. We typically will not build less than 1.4 because then it creates a problem. But 1.7 is a very safe number to use. We're using 2 in this community.
I'm just concerned, and I think we all know of what area I'm talking about, that appears to have 2, and there's parking all over the streets right
Yeah.
now, which is
I mean another project.
another project, not
Is it fee simple project? Is it a
no,
townhouse?
rental.
Rental, yeah.
Yes,
Are they gated?
they are not gated, but it's a similar situation, and it's actually isolated. So they don't have parking coming from other areas.
I
if
mean,
that's what
under our
you're-
leases, we have a lot of control. Like I was saying to you, we have a lot more control than code enforcement. We can tell a tenant, you're in violation of your lease, doing this, you're out. So we don't have to wait for the 30-day notice and do have to provide them notice, but I'm saying we're not gonna have to wait through the process of going to a code enforcement hearing, then have an enforcement action, all that process to get rid of somebody who left a car there on the street.
If you're comfortable with your parking, of the 2 units per, then you
Yeah.
shouldn't have an issue with no on-street parking.
Well, I just think it makes it illegal for someone to park. If someone comes to visit you and they park there, now you're susceptible to him giving me a ticket for something that really is not going to be an issue. If it becomes an issue, then we've got to address it. If he comes, because we're going to give the police the opportunity to come and enforce our traffic rules. They want it. We said, okay, absolutely. We want him in there. We want him seeing. If we give people a speeding, we can't give them a ticket ourselves. We want them to give them a ticket.
So if the parking becomes an issue, then the police go in there and start ticketing everyone who's parked on street.
Well, but keep in mind, we own the property. We can change the rules. We can change the rules. Yeah. We can change. Yeah, we can
Sure.
change the rules within our property and make it fix the problem, whatever the problem is, because it's a problem that we're living with.
But the opportunity we have now is you may make it a condition of approval. That's where it comes in, and then it takes it, not to say it's in your hand or out of your hands, but then it's no longer a rule, it's a condition of approval.
But I think you're making an issue where there isn't an issue, and you end up.
Oh, there's an
Yeah,
issue,
yeah.
trust me, there's an issue. I've heard it from numerous people, not with your development,
Right.
but
Right, but what I'm saying, we are going to have control over that issue. If we are having a problem with people blocking the street, we're going to resolve it within our own rules to get those tenants off the street.
how about one side only parking?
We can do that, ma'am. That's okay.
I'm just worried
Yeah.
again about the fire trucks.
Yeah,
and
we can
everyone
put
getting
one side parking only. That's fine.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. That works. I personally live in St. Petersburg, and that's what happens there.
Mhm.
You can only park on one side.
I just don't want,
Yeah, that's fine. One side parking works. I don't have a problem with that. Let us select the side, though, right?
you're going to take the outside ring, I already know that.
No. No, we'll do it on one side, that's fine. I mean, we want to work with the rules, within the rules, and make him work. The last thing we want is see him coming over there giving us problems, you know?
I think that's all
Okay.
the questions we have, but also the city has an opportunity to ask you any questions or any follow-up as well. They have a cross-examination right as well. Any questions? So you want to waive that? Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
So,
May I make one more comment?
of course.
With regards to the fencing, I did bring an exhibit to show you the fencing that we were going to do, and I may pass this around. Because it was a question
Thank you.
about fencing the property.
Do you have a copy for the clerk as well? But before we go any further, is there any objection? I'd like to accept this into the record as an exhibit and consider it.
No objection.
Yes, you. The methadone clinic that exists. I'm sorry.
Before we go any further, any reason not to accept this into the record as evidence? Okay, thank you. We'll make it part of the record then. Thank you. Go
Thank you
ahead.
very much. In red, you see in this exhibit is the proposed area of the fence, because we can't go any farther than that. It's going to be either in a ditch or it's going to be in the wetlands. So we have outlined the Washington Street. Along Washington Street, we'll be doing some columns to make the fence look prettier. And I was going to give you the option of doing the lattice work on top or do a solid. It doesn't really matter to us. People were saying they'd rather just have it all blocked, opaque. I'm okay either way. Doesn't really make any difference to me. I was going to give you all the option to do that. On the sides of the property will look more like the second picture, the exhibit, example number 2, which is a regular PVC fence, 6 foot in height. The city was very precise that they wanted the fence to be at least 6 foot high at a planning and zoning hearing. We have no problem with that. And along the Washington Street will also be a 6 foot fence, but we're gonna have some columns every 100 feet about, there'll be a column to kind of break it up. That was an exhibit that I prepared to share with you and see if you all had any questions on it.
Can I speak, or what's the purpose, since obviously example 1 I'll call the showpiece, and example 2 is the non-showpiece.
Well, it was the north side and the south side.
Well, yeah, you're isolating Broadway with the non-showpiece versus Washington, which the showpiece. Is there a reason for the separation between the two?
It's just an expensive thing to do. We could do it with the ladders the same way. The fence is fairly, the price differential between the ladders and non-ladders is not significant. What's expensive is those columns. Those columns are almost $3,000 a column. So we just did it on Washington Street. We thought that was the most prominent to the traffic and the visitors and the residents going by. So we chose example number 1.
Well, I would think you'd want to keep a unity between Washington Street and Broadway. Maybe not necessarily the columns, but at least the look of the fence should be unity across the two of them.
That's why I gave you pictures. Look at it. Any other questions?
That's all that I had. Mr. Kinsella? Councilwoman Searle?
I'm fine, thank you.
All set. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And for the record, the city waves any cross? That party? Okay. So at this time, what I wanted to do, there's no other parties, but I certainly wanted to take testimony or commentary from the general public. And there's a list of folks that signed up. So I'm going to go down the list at this point and take statements from everybody. Just For the record, anyone that wants to give any kind of testimony will be subject to any kind of questioning by any of the parties. Just procedurally, that's the way it'll happen. But I wanted to start with, I think, Claudia Smith. Welcome. Come on up.
Claudia Smith, 7335 Candlelight Court.
And have you been sworn, Ms. Smith?
Yes,
Okay.
I raised my hand.
Thank you.
I have a mix of comments and things experienced in my neighborhood just to offer up to help y'all make a decision. One of the first things I want to say to you, and I could be wrong, is that I don't think any of you live on our side of 19 or in the Washington Candlelight area, correct? Okay. We have to decide what direction Port Richey is headed. And right now, in my experience here the last few years, whenever there was anything about rental properties, people were not happy about that because they said that brings in an element we really want to get away from. And from what I understand, there are a lot of apartments that have been built behind on Walmart. If you drive down 54, have you seen how many apartment complexes are on 54? So why does Port Richey want apartments in my neighborhood? I would be more accepting of a rental property if it was 55 and over. Look at Abigail Court. 3 stories, 55 and over. They have a waiting list. They have had a waiting list since they opened up. I think that older would bring us a different element of rentals. They don't transient. They are on fixed incomes. They would be thrilled to have a country club atmosphere, to be able to walk in the streets, have a swimming pool. I don't agree with the traffic report. I think that is just hysterical. I live in Candlelight. There are 30 houses. 2 cars for every house. That's 60 cars. I am the first house, and I think y'all all know that. You would not believe what we have going through there. There are all the cars coming and going, delivery people, FedEx, UPS, maintenance, police, you name it, and it's all day. And even at night, because I'm up midnight and I can hear cars. So you're gonna tell me that it's not gonna affect Washington? Oh, come on. Do you live on Washington? No, you don't. We have recently had Washington paved, and it's already got a little bit of problem. We have a couple of dips that have never been corrected when they repaved it. So my other question is that if we're going to have this project, and I assume we're going to have some sort of project, are we going to have impact fees to fix Washington when all of the...
And you can conclude your statement, of course.
I waited my time. She's giving me time.
Go ahead. Can we just restart the clock then? Thank you.
So are we going to have money set aside to fix Washington when the cement trucks come through, the truss trucks, the dirt people, all the other people and trucks that come through for the project? I hope so, because I would really hate to see Washington go back to what it was. Infrastructure. I understand that the infrastructure has been there like 8 years, and I believe that the developer did say that they've looked at some of it to make sure that it's still in good shape. I hope that we require that. I don't know, who knows what could happen with the pipes. We know we've had so many water issues in Port Richey that some of the pipes could be rotted. Who knows? So I think that's something that we need to require, that we be able to see a current infrastructure look at all of what they have already had there. There are going to be 4 wells. That worries me. What is that going to do to Candlelight? What is that going to do to the city? I know the water is going to be used for watering the plants and all that kind of stuff. But there's so many other things. Candlelight is just now getting to where we don't flood every time there's a storm. I just don't want to see us have to do that again. This project could greatly impact our neighborhood. It could hurt our home values. It could add to Port Richey's tarnished reputation, and you're like, well, how? Okay, what if we start having traffic increases that are awful on Washington? What about if we have an element, a criminal element that comes into there with the rentals? What if we start having water and flooding issues in Candlelight again or around Washington? If you vote for this, where will you be when the people in Candlelight and Washington in that area are having the aftermath? Thank you.
Thank you. The next person that signed up, I'm just going to take Mrs. Burke off. I think she gave her time away. Mr. Burke, Kenny Burke, welcome. Come on up.
Kenneth Burke, Washington Street. First of all, we know we're not going to stop development there. That's inevitable, and we know that. Second of all, just like she just said, you guys don't live there. I work from home. I am dead across from that property, dead across. Yesterday morning, when their little traffic counters were out there, their traffic counts are off so bad it's pathetic. I counted 37 school buses alone in the morning. That's just the morning run. That's not the afternoon run. These are only PM surveys. PM is not necessarily busier than the AM. It's just not that way. I can tell you right now, more than 10 cars per hour go by my front door. Not just one way, both ways. People use Washington Street as a through street. It is not. Also, I would have to really look at your surveys and stuff like that. I don't think the road's capable of handling the heavy traffic. You've already got semis going down through there. Heck, I get 50 frickin' passes a day just from the city of Newport Richey. Just from their city vehicles. So we know we're not going to stop the development, but we want to make sure it's development for Port Richey. And I think we need to require a 55-plus community. You've already set precedents in Abigail. They've already got a waiting list. Police department, I am sure there's not very many calls up there. We can't control the traffic on Washington Street now. It's impossible. He can't do it. He doesn't have enough officers or enough vehicles. I am sure, I've heard numerous stories. We've had motorcycles clocked at 70 miles an hour going down Washington Street. Next thing is the flooding. I don't care what you say. The more concrete you add, the less absorption you have into the aquifer. Fire department come up and launch their boat in front of my house any storm they want to. It'll float. I'm not saying the motor is going to work, but it'll float. This is only going to add to that problem. It's going to back up Washington Street so bad, and it's just not on one side. It is 2 feet deep on both sides of the road. You did not fix the problem when you repaved it. All you did was repave over the old problem. You didn't redo the base. The base is not substantial enough to hold the heavy traffic that is going to be coming down that road. It is just not there. I think the city needs to take a direction. We are a small city, and we have very little land to develop. Go to the right direction. We need to make this a 55-plus community. I think that works for everybody in a lot better form. I even think the developer will get more out of his property as a 55-plus community. We're already golf cart friendly. You've got a fire station 2 blocks away. You've got a hospital 3 blocks away. There's not a 55 person in the world that wouldn't want to retire here if it's done right. I think we need to put an age limit on this community. I think it really requires that, especially for this city to to move forward in a very positive manner. There's a lot of apartments being built, see them every day. Just like she said, go down 54, I bet there's 2,000 freaking units being built. Guaranteed. So I think you guys ought to really take a look at this. And I think that the biggest requirement would be a 55 community. I think that would relinquish a lot of the problems that the city will encompass with this. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. The next person that was signed up was Melissa Hughes. Welcome, come on up. Did you receive the oath earlier?
I did.
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Okay, so Melissa Hughes, I reside at 5815 Orange Grove Avenue. Technically, my address is Newport Richey, but I'm Pasco County. I am very close to that property. I don't know if you know where Orange Grove Avenue is, but it's parallel to Broadway. I could say a lot about the flooding. I could say a lot about the traffic. I could say a lot about all of that, which they've already said. But my thought on all this, and I took a lot of notes, so I'm going to read from my notes, is that since I've lived on Orange Grove, I bought my home in 2008, which was right at the housing crash. I've seen this area go through some serious bad times. We've seen prostitutes on Washington. There's been severe drug activity, crime, you name it. But with that being said, I've also seen tremendous growth in this area. Both cities, Newport Richey, Port Richey, have put so much effort into revitalizing the area. My property value has gone up so much. So my question to you guys is, with the rentals, what's that going to do for the area and all the work that we've put in? Now, it sounds like we're not stopping him from developing it, but it sounds like maybe we have some options to kind of keep those property values up. You made a good point. The area is homes, it's not rentals. And look at that property, it's right by the river. I mean, it's like this desirable area. We see this development coming from East Pasco all the way down to West, and we know that our area is like super desirable. Property values are only gonna increase as the development continues our way. So my thought is, with these rentals, we worry about transiency. We worry about, will the rates plummet, the rent rates? You know, how can we control that? I don't know. But maybe there's some things, some factors that we can decide before he develops the land that can help some of these things. Keep the reputation that you guys have worked so hard to get up from where it was, make it stay there. Let's see, I just want to go through my notes. I think that's really it. I mean, Claudia and the other gentleman that spoke before me, they made a lot of good points. The flooding is crazy. My street, Orange Grove, Claudia, she would know. I've literally, no joke, seen a guy kayak down my road during some of the bad storms. No joke. Kayak down Orange Grove Avenue. If you add all this concrete, it's not going to get better. I know she's worried back there about by candlelight and everything like that, but there's other areas that do flood. If you've ever driven down Washington after a storm, there's these dips. And I know they've improved after they have paved it, but those dips are still there. So with all this traffic coming in and out and all these cars now that weren't there, are those dips going to continue to dip down? Are we still going to have that major flooding? I don't know. I don't know any of these answers, but just some food for thought, guys. The area has grown so much, and I just would hate to see it go back the other way with rentals, transiency, just things like that. And that's it.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah.
The next person that signed up is, I'm going to do the best with the last name. Megan, is it Sharb? Schlarb, I'm sorry. Welcome. Come on up. Did you accept the oath earlier?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Megan Schlarb. I live at 7525 Washington Street. My house is basically right across the street from what is going to be the main entrance to this community. So obviously I'm not thrilled about that. There already is that deceleration lane to go into the community. There's people that park over there, pull over there, just sit over there across the street from my house all the time. It upsets my dogs. It makes me uncomfortable that I feel like people are looking at me or just sitting in front of my house. So I worry about that. And then with the stacking of the cars, I worry about traffic. I worry about crime, a lot of foot traffic, people walking up and down the street. I've had people come to my door in the middle of the night, trying to ask me for money, looking in my windows, walking through my yard. So I just worry about the type of crowd that rentals may bring into the area. I would like to piggyback off of what everybody else has said so far, that I think moving in the right direction would be something like a 55-plus community. I would feel much safer with that in the area. I mean, yeah, I just worry about safety, crime, and moving forward, like going in the right direction for our city. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next person that was signed up was Linda Rodriguez. Welcome. Come on up. You accepted the oath earlier?
I did, thank you.
All right, very well, thank you.
Linda Rodriguez, 5917 Lantern Court. I live just to the left, that's my roof, of the G on Google. That's how close I am to the property. I spoke to these gentlemen at the last meeting. The flooding is a huge concern. I did have 14 inches of standing water at the end of my driveway, and I did kayak to the end of Google, where it was 22 inches of standing water at the end of the driveway. I do know that there was some cleanup done in the back, so on and so forth, of debris that has helped the flooding since then. But when you do put all the concrete down for the footings for 126 buildings, that is going to decrease, and that water has to go someplace. I did speak to the engineer, and he also said the water will go into the areas allotted. Well, it's also going to go into the lake that's right there, and it's going to overflow, which is what happens. The lake overflows into my street, and I get 14 inches of water, and I can't get out. That's one concern. I also have issue with the traffic study. Let's do the math. 126 units times 2 cars, times they go to work once and come home once for 30 days. That's 15,000 cars on Washington a month. That's just if they go to work once, both cars. Can Washington handle that? I leave for work every morning at 6:15, and right by the S-curve, and it's difficult to get out. So if I have 15,000 cars, and they're not going to be spread out over 24 hours, it's going to be between 6 a.m. and, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night for the majority of them. The traffic on that road is going to increase immensely. I also understand that they said the 1,700 cars a day is what it can handle. You've all driven Washington. Can that really handle an additional 15,000 cars a month? Seems like a lot. I don't know if it can. So I understand it's going to be developed. I've lived in my house for 33 years. That has been vacant for all that time. I've seen all the signs go up, and I understand that. We just need to be wary of what we put there and how we do it, not just approve anything. It needs to fit our vision for what we want for Port Richey, and we need to also watch out for our residents that are still here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. That was all that was signed up, but I wanted to make sure that anyone that came in later wasn't able to sign up can speak. Welcome, come on up. If you don't mind, state your name and then make sure you're sworn in.
My name is Clinton Wynn. I live at 12709 Wynn Lane in Hudson. I own the property on Pulsar Street, which is right next to Broadway. I'm really embarrassed that you guys have not even brought up the condition of Broadway.
Did you accept the oath earlier?
No.
No. Raise your right hand.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Other hand. Yes.
Thank you. You can proceed.
Okay. I bought the lot on Pulsar Street in 2008, kind of like the same story that some people have bought. There were some structures on there that I had demoed. Again, trying to do something good for the city. Our family's been in Pasco since '53. We've got the Wynn property out in Hudson. The point I'm making is the developer here is blowing Skittles and rainbows here, okay? The reason why you have a problem here with everybody with their flooding is because when I was going to Ritchie Elementary in the 70s and 80s, there was planning in Pasco that we're now dealing with now because of the flooding, okay? And it was my father's era and my grandfather's era. So I'm here, trying to be here and be constructive. I can't even sell the damn property in Newport Richey.
Watch your language,
Okay,
please.
I can't even give it away, okay? You wanna see rentals? Go on Pulsar Street. Those are rentals. So when you guys go to your places in Gulf Harbors, wherever you live, drive by Broadway and see it. It looks like Swiss cheese, okay? And then to do just some junky fence on Broadway, because you don't wanna save a couple money on some posts, but you'll do it on Washington, okay? As you can tell, I'm fired up. I've owned this property for 12 years, okay? I've been mowing it, I've been maintaining it. I'm actually on the Citizens Advisory Council, and I report to Mike Wells, but now Commissioner Fitzpatrick. So I'm on Tanya Gorman's committee. So I'm involved. I'm not just here just to complain and not do anything. I'm actually involved, and I'm trying to help be a voice. All I'm saying is, drive down Pulsar Street. There is mattresses leaning up against a telephone pole that I've been trying to get removed for 6 months, okay? There's a broken down truck in the front with tires hanging out of it. The person's been to jail 3 times and they won't remove the truck, okay? So we can give all these little thing and dance about rentals and what we can control. You can't control rentals at all. It's like herding cats. You can't. 55 and up is a great concept. But all I'm just saying is, I don't want to be here 30 years from now complaining about a situation you guys did off of Washington when people are here speaking and sharing, and we're all dead, okay? And then we're trying to clean up a mess, and we've left it for our grandkids and kids. So that's where I'm at. Again, I'd love you to go by and look at Broadway. Drive on it, please. If you have dentures, they're going to fall out, okay? It's disgusting that you can pave Washington but leave Broadway that way. So please, I want to encourage everybody, go down Pulsar and Broadway tonight or in the morning and look at the condition of the place. It's a dump. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else by show of hands that would like to speak? Seeing none, I'm going to close any kind of testimony from the public. I did want to give the city an opportunity for a 5-minute closing statement if they wish to make one, or you can waive. Okay, and I wanted to give the builder, Carlos, I wanted to give you an opportunity for closing, and I wanted to give you a 5-minute and a little bit more if you need it. So.
No, I don't think I'll need that much.
Okay.
Thank you. We try to address some of the concerns the residents have brought in. As far as the drainage, this drainage system fills into the property, into our property, and by the designs of SWIFMA, it has to elevate to a certain level before it goes out. There's a natural flow. That permit is in existence today and is good for another 2 years. The north parcel, we're going to put a new permit because it's a separate system. So we're as concerned about flooding as they would be. And we don't want our streets flooded. We don't want to flood anybody else either, but we technically can build a lot more on this property than we are. So we're creating a lot more than could be done on this property. So we are going to be an owner occupant in a sense that we are the owners and we're going to manage it and we're going to be there. And I'm sure we're going to have renters that will create problems here and there, but we've got to deal with them. It's a part of a lot of the single rentals that you see are single family owners that rent their houses, and they don't know what's going on. We're there. We have a management team on site looking every day. I think it's a little different. And I'm here to address any other questions that you may have.
Sure. If you can, just state your name for the record.
Sure. My name is Josh Bradley
Okay,
with
thank you.
Native Engineering 15903 Leatherleaf, and I have been sworn. Yes, sir. I'm Carlos's engineer for this site. We worked on this project in 2014 and 15 to create the 78 unit lots. As you may know if you've been around that area, we started that project. The roads were built, the fill was brought in. Fill was already brought in, the road was already there. We were redoing the roads as far as reconditioning them in the same places they were before. So I wanted to speak directly to the drainage because I think there's a misconception. I think the man said something about rainbows and Skittles. We're not saying we're going to fix the drainage problems out here. We're saying we're not going we're not going to create any drainage problems out here. What our responsibility is, and what every homeowner's responsibility is, and what my responsibility is as an engineer, is to evaluate a site in the existing condition, and we have to model it to where it has a certain amount of flow and certain storms. I personally use the 10-year 24-hour storm. SwiftMud requires the 25-year 24-hour storm. And I always run the 100-year 24-hour storm because I want to check the FEMA maps to see if it's kosher, if it's consistent with what I'm getting in my modeling. What we do is we run those storms in the existing condition, and there's a certain flow. That's what we use is cubic feet per second. It's a certain amount of flow that comes off a site. We cannot increase that flow. So we submit as a PE, I'm a professional engineer, I submit my calculations, my drainage report is a half-inch thick. I submit those and my plans to SwiftMud, where they are reviewed by PEs as well. They run my modeling and make sure it's correct. So whatever was there existing, when I say existing, before there was anything there. So back in 2007, I understand that was built. That was not my developer, it was myself that designed it. It was designed for 192 townhouse units. The parking was built, the roads were built, the water, sewer, storm, all that was in the ground and constructed. They just didn't build the buildings. We came in afterwards. So before all that was built, they did their modeling, they did a flow. We did our modeling and flow, and we cannot increase. Matter of fact, we're way below it. So I cannot say that we're going to come in here and nobody's going to flood down in Oak Grove. I think it's Oak Grove or Orange Grove. Sorry, Orange Grove. When I walked the site a couple of years back trying to figure out this whole thing, I saw couches, I saw garbage, mattresses in those ditches, and that is the ditch where Orange Grove Avenue is. That is that entire wetland system to the east. That is where it eventually flows out to the canal. If that has couches in it, and that is our number one issue when we look at discharge and flooding is unkept ditches. Maintained by municipalities. It's not you, I understand it's Pasco County. Regardless, so just wanted to get that out of the way, that the drainage permit is in place. That whole center wetland was constructed to hold the storm. There are many flumes that go in there with ditches that treat the water before it goes into that wetland. And then in all discharges, there's I call it a bridge, but it's a large culvert that goes under the road at the southeast corner of where the road kind of makes a 90. That's where it crosses over. That's where this project will be pumping out. The lady that I spoke to after one of the meetings, we discussed, once we put buildings on here, yes, it's going to create, runoff off a concrete or a building is going to move faster because it can't go into the ground. The original permit was for these large townhome buildings. Now we're using small little buildings. So we are much less impervious area from what was permitted and constructed. We're bringing in much less, and we're not touching any of the facilities that let water out faster or anything like that. We're holding it on site. Again, we're not bringing any more fill. The fill's already been brought in. The roof runoff, we have to put a note in our plans that the roof runoff has to be directed towards the front of the yard and into the county or our drainage system on site for treatment and attenuation. So the drainage itself, we're not going to fix the issue. It's not caused by the site, and it won't be caused by the site, whatever is built here. But it is something that's very heavily regulated. I am a drainage engineer. I take this personally. As a PE, my number one rule or my number one responsibility is public health and safety and to the environment. My second responsibility is to my client. That's my first. So I take that to heart, and I would love to help. It's just not caused by that site. I also want to, if I can, address some of the other questions.
Of course.
Engineering-wise. About the traffic, I brought one of these trip generation models or manuals. This is just one volume. This is for the residential side. Now, these are brought out. This is the 9th edition. The new one that was used in the report is a 10th edition, so it's newer than this. I just wanted to show you the volume of work that goes into these manuals. Everything is based off of these manuals. To say it's erroneous or to say that 126 units will never produce that, we always want to look at, 2 cars leaving, of 126 units leaving at the exact same time is going to do all this craziness to the traffic. That's not how it works. These trip generation manuals look at UPS trucks coming in. They look at friends coming in. They look at the mail coming in. They look at school buses. They look at all of those issues. And they look at all, and they go across the United States and into Canada. And this one itself, again, I don't know about the 10th edition, but the 9th edition went up to 90 studies for a development just like this. 90 studies to get these averages. So this is not numbers that we're pulling out of the air. These are numbers that we design around. And the 1,700, someone called out the 1,700 trips for capacity. That's not us. That is not what we said the capacity of the road is. That's what the city says. And we have to stay under that. So, and I also believe somebody said that the traffic study that was done was erroneous or so bad it's pathetic. I think the comment was, these are professional engineers doing these counts and signing these reports. I'm a professional engineer. I'm not going to lie on a report that I'm signing and sealing. If they strapped a traffic count, that's exactly what traffic they counted for 3 days. And it was actually lower than what Pasco County said, slightly lower. So we can use Pasco County's numbers. We can use all 126, even if you said all 126 units, 2 cars per unit, were leaving at the same time, it still doesn't meet the capacity of 1,700 for a failed road that's set by the city, not by us. So I just want to address that. Lastly, I gotta underline, again, I've been doing this for 20 plus years, and we get into these public hearings and we talk about what we want. We want 55 plus community. We want single family homes. That's what I'm hearing. We tried single family homes. We tried 78 of them. That didn't work. It wasn't there. What we can do right now, and I just want to make sure this is clear because we had trouble with this at the P&Z. We can do 240 apartment units right now, and we don't have to come here. We put our plans together, we submit them, they get approved, we build it. We don't have to come, and we don't have to talk with the public, we don't have to meet before this council for any of that. That is 240 apartment units. So if you vote no today, we already know that single family didn't work. What's going to happen? If you're worried about the impervious area, if you're worried about the amount of traffic that goes on Washington, think about that. What is going to happen if we get voted no? My developer, like he said, he's looked at, I've done concepts. I did one in November of 2018, did another one in 2012. 240 units easily works on this site. There are 3-story buildings. There are 24 units of building. There's 10 buildings with parking all over the place. Just think of the amount of traffic. And he will likely, developers do the highest and best use of a property. That is their job. They look at the highest and best use. So if he cannot do these villas, which is, in his opinion, the highest and best use, it's not my opinion because I'm just an engineer, that's the highest and best use. If he can't do that, then he sells it to a developer who looks at it and goes, do I want to buy this property? Let's see, 78 units didn't work. Villas can't work. Okay, I'm going to do the 250 apartment units. And that's what he's allowed to do without asking for permission. I just want to make that clear because if we're worried about traffic and we're worried about impervious area and we're worried about rentals, just think about what can happen if we say no today. That's it. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. With that, I think that closes out the evidence.
Can I ask one question, or is that out of order?
You've already closed the case. This was closing statements?
Correct.
You want to reopen the case?
There's a motion to reopen. I'm going to allow
I
that.
just had one question. And
Sure, I'll reopen for some additional evidence.
It's up to you, just so we know where we're going here.
So first of all, who are you asking?
I'm asking the engineer.
Yeah, come on back up.
One of the questions was the existing infrastructure of the space. Was that evaluated and reviewed?
Yeah, so it was evaluated in 2015, maybe 16. What we did is a TV test, is what we drag a TV through so for sanitary, we drag a TV through, it's called a mandrel test, but you drive a camera with this, looks like a ball with a bunch of spikes, and you drag it through and you video it the entire length of the pipe to make sure there's no dips or cracks or damaged pipes. We'll do it again because we need to make sure that any damaged areas are taken care of. We did identify some areas that did need to be repaired. As far as the water goes, what we do are pressure tests, and what we'll have to do is bacteriological tests to make sure We meet FDEP criteria on that. But we do pressure tests, there can't be any pressure drop, and if there is, then you have to go find where the leak is and we fix it. So absolutely, we have to take care of it, and we'll do it again.
Thank you, and I think we're going to close the evidence out now, if that's okay.
Was the city's waiving any cross on that, right? Because you reopened the, you don't have anything else, right, Ms. Renner? That you want to ask him regarding that statement that you just made?
Oh, no, I don't.
They reopened the case, so we're back to where we were before.
Right.
They reopened the case, back, you understand?
Right, so we're back to beginning. So,
Okay, so you're done now?
yeah, correct, all parties, no other issues, Carlos, city? Okay. So at this time, with evidence closed, closing arguments are done. At this time, I think the, procedurally, we'll go into some discussion and/or motions with.
Either way, whatever you want to do.
Yep. And I think I'll begin the discussion if you guys don't mind. There's been a lot of testimony about traffic, about flooding, and about issues that are always going to plague that area in our city. The first thing I'll say is I'm pro-development. I really want to see our city develop, and I want to see it grow, but I think it has to be done in the right fashion and with what fits our area with what we already have. And just geographically looking at that area, we have basically waterfront homes just a block over, and a lot of people that have lived there a long time and invested in their properties. And just stepping back and looking at the big picture, just my humble opinion, I think having that many units on that small amount of property doesn't fit the area, doesn't really fit the vision that I have for the city moving forward. And that's my concern. And one of the things that is being asked is that we have variances to fit more units than we would normally allow there. And that's something that I'm struggling with and that I just personally don't agree with. I have an issue with that. And for all those reasons, that's why I have some issues with this particular project. And it's not all the different nuances that we talked about, because I think those are all issues that will be there regardless of what develops in that area. But the idea of having variances to fit more buildings than should normally go there is one of the things, like I said, I have an issue with. And I don't think it really fits the overall vision of the surrounding area of our city. So those are the concerns that I had, and with that, I just wanted to pass it off to the rest of the council for discussion and/or any motions.
We have to look at it both ways. The villas may be the less evil of the two. If someone else comes in here and decides to build the 3-story, we have absolutely no say in that. We're going to increase the number of people that are coming in with the apartments, buildings. Traffic will go up. All the things increase than what we have now. So we have to look at it from both perspectives. Yes, it may be the lesser of two evils, so to speak, but we have to keep in that the alternative, in our view, may be worse.
And for me, it's not an evil.
No, I'm just saying.
Developed, but I just
it needs to be developed.
But I don't see that the way that it's laid out. And the other issue that I have is I really like the original plan where they had individual, units and different potential owners. So, those are all the issues that I had. And I see both sides of it. And if someone comes in and they're allowed to develop and they put 240 units, then so be it. If our code allows it and that's what happens, I don't know, if we don't control that, it is what it is. But that having been said, I necessarily just don't agree with the way this is laid out. So, I don't, by fear of something else different coming in, that's not going to change my opinion. And, but I wanted everyone else's opinion. It's important to me, important to the city.
I'm not real crazy about the idea of rentals either, but I think this is the lesser of the evils that could be there. I would much rather have a villa situation that is more on the upscale where the rents are in the 1,500 area than to have 240 income guided rents, which is what Abigail Court is. That is based on their incomes. That's where their rents come from, is from their incomes. If we have a standard or a builder that is going to come in here and give us tenants that have a certain value, because they have to meet his requirements to come in there is much better than to settle for something that could be worse. I think the villas are far, far better fit for this city, even though probably not the most desirable thing, than 253-story buildings, because the other development that we have right now is just awful. It's an eyesore, it's a problem. We have issues with the tenants in there. We have crime issues in there already. This does not seem like it's going to present that type of atmosphere like the one that we have now. I would rather have the villas than the apartments. I would rather have the villas with an income requirement. I would love to have 55 and older, but the builder does not see that fitting his financial needs. So I'd rather go for the semi-professional, working from home, multifamily, single-story unit. I'm not necessarily pleased with the rental units, but I'm going to take the lesser of the two evils.
And the other thing that I was going to point out is you have other rentals that are going in that price range that they're looking to rent for, and we still have all those problems. And that's one of the concerns I have. You have Avila Bay, for example, and I'm just going to come out and say it because I'm familiar with it, and their rentals are anywhere between $1,650 and $1,350, which is very similar to the price range here. So, and it's very similar in the size units and so on and so forth. And that's really kind of the concern I have, because we've already done that and it didn't fit that area of the city very well. I don't know why it would fit the area of the city on the other side of the river any better. And that, because I thought about that very carefully, looking at this plan versus, where we have, other similar issues, and we've had those problems, and that's some of the concern that I have. And so I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
Avila Bay is horrible. I mean, just in my personal opinion, 3-story buildings under, they're packed in there like sardines. They do not have a nice entrance to it, really. You can't drive through there and say this is a nice area to eat, because the cars are parked on the streets. There's a parking issue with that. They're not going to have a community center. They're not going to have a pool center that's any bigger than a spa, from what I see, for the number of units they've got there. I do think there's a crime element whenever you put any kind of a number of people together. There's always going to be that issue. I don't think that single-family homes would change that anymore. We have crime issues in some of the nicer areas, too. We had a big drug problem in Candlelight, which is one of the nice ones, one of the nicer areas.
Sure.
We had a big drug house down there, and those people had to live through all of that. I mean, I understand that we're going to have those problems, but we've got to pick the progress that we're going to have available to us. We don't have the opportunity to choose what goes in there. It doesn't belong to us. It belongs to this gentleman, and he's trying to put something in there with a 6-foot fence all around it, so there's a certain amount of security. There's an appearance to the place that is nicer than some areas. He's putting in single story, so there's not that visual problem that we have at Avila Bay. He's addressing the parking areas. I mean, and he's an on-site owner. I don't think we've got that at Avila Bay. I mean, I don't think that Avila Bay even really cares. That's just by appearances. I do have concerns about the streets. If they're going to bring in all the trucks and the cement and everything like that, will there be reparations to the street from our builder to help offset that? I mean, that would be a nice thing to have, that if there's damage to Washington Street, that he will help, repair that situation so that we don't have the problems with the dips and everything. Yeah, the foundation is a problem, but hindsight's 20/20. We can't do anything about that. So I just think that it's the lesser of the possible evils that we could have there. If we have another developer come in and put 250 units on there, he's not going to care. This gentleman has a certain amount of responsibility for what he's building, and I think he should be respected for that.
I do recognize that he has a financial interest. He's come in, he's made a large commitment into coming into the city, so I recognize that. But it's just, I just have a little bit difference of opinion in terms of what that area should look like, so that's all.
I would love to have that.
So-
I would love to have that, but that's not a choice on the table
I
tonight.
understand.
That we don't have a choice there. We have a choice of a villa, single unit villas that are there, or 3-story apartment buildings.
Or it doesn't get developed at all. Yeah, there's a lot of things that could happen.
I
sure.
don't think this man is going to let it just sit for another 10 years.
Okay.
He's going to sell it to somebody who's going to develop it, or he's going to do it himself.
I'm kind of sharing everyone else's thought process. Here's the problem. We are in a zoning meeting. We cannot decide on what his use of the property is. We can't designate, oh, he's going to rent it. Oh, we can't let him do that. That will get us into court. It'll give Mr. Matthews something to do for the next 6 or 8 months, but it'll cost us a lot of money. At the end of the day, we have to view on what the layout of the property is. So as far as we're concerned, it's 126 single-family homes that are being sold. Really, we can't say, oh, he's renting it, sorry, no good. The other aspect is, he's right, he could go tomorrow and put 240 or 250 units on. He could probably squeeze a little more if he wants to go into mitigation of the wetlands. He could probably squeeze even a few more units on. He pays $100,000 an acre. To Pasco, they have plenty of space open for their wetlands mitigation, and he can probably create even some more units on if he wants. From a strict math perspective, 250 units, I was doing the math earlier, at $800 a unit, which will really drop down rentals in the area, actually yields him more, close your ears, actually yields him more revenue on a monthly basis than these units at $1,300 to $1,500 per month rent. It's $200,000 for 250 units at $800 a unit, and he makes about $170,000 at $1,300 a unit for these units. So it's looking at what is possible and what is feasible. I think with all the development on 54 going on right now, to see someone coming in here and trying to pick off 240 units at 800 to 1,000 square feet a piece, that's very feasible. And actually, I could probably line that up fairly quickly too. But, you know, it's dealing with what we have with the property. And this, I think there needs to be some caveats put in place. I think we as council need to mandate that there is differentiation, so it's not a ka-chunk, 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 ka-chunk of units and you know, just pure replication. You've already indicated that you have intent to do that. I think we have to control the ability of on-street parking. I think we have to mandate that, you know, our police officers are able to go in and enforce fully and right away before the first unit is even closed out for TCO, that the agreement is signed, that we can have full enforcement capabilities in that property area. I think we need to mandate, and I think your intention, you said 1,100 square foot units. I think we should put that as part of a requirement. Therefore, we're not, right now the minimum is down to 800, but we have the ability as part of the approval process to set a higher bar, which is in line with what he's saying already, and he's already nodding that he doesn't have an issue. But I think we have to put the controls in place from a council perspective to try and, I'll say not guarantee, but encourage a strong development here that is to the benefit of the city as best as what we have to deal with. we're never going to get, you know, right now we're probably not going to get 78 single-family units, 4,000 square foot apiece. I'd love to have it, you know, the next
Right.
day, but that's not what you're dealt with
But
right now.
I'm okay working with the builder, but one of the issues that I have, and I still can't get over that issue, is the variance, how close these buildings are gonna be together, and I just,
But you're worried about how close the buildings are. He could stack literally 3-story buildings, ka-chunk, 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 right next to him, and have 240 units or 230
sure,
units.
but still, if that's within our code and he can do that, then so be it, but this is something that he still needs, or is asking a variance to do, which normally wouldn't be done, and that's in part for reasons that you guys were talking about with trying to get, trucks back there parking and all these other issues that you have.
The variance he's going for, really, that affects him the most. And from what I'm looking at this, the side-to-side setback is probably the biggest limiting factor to him. Instead of 15 feet, he's going to 10 feet. The rear setbacks only affect a couple units. Look like he'd only drop about 5 units, even if we didn't enforce the back setbacks. And the engineer could probably talk to him more than I could, but you'd lose 5 units if we said no to the rear yard setbacks. That's really not a...
But I wouldn't necessarily be opposed with this if there were less units either. I think having that many units is part of the issue.
But he could tell us right now to go scratch and then say, I'll put in 250 units tomorrow.
And if he's within the city code, then it is what it is, but.
And theoretically, he could put in 250 units of Section 8 and no one in the world would stop him.
Exactly.
So, I mean, we can work with the developer, mandate no Section 8 house. Well, I don't even think we can legally do that. You can't do that. But he's already agreed to not doing that. He's agreed to a minimum square footage on the units, that an 1,100 square foot unit, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, you're going to have a minimum rental requirement no matter what, just with what else is in the market right now. Yes, we have a Velia Bay problem. Not sure what to do about that one yet, but it's dealing right now with a known. Avelia came in as, oh yeah, we're selling as townhouses, and they flipped to rentals. You can't say a word about that. At least now we're up in the open and talking about it, and can put in on restrictions that can, and agreements that can better the neighborhood as best as possible, dealing with what we're dealing with.
But I don't know what you can do to control that, whether they do 250 units or this. I mean, even like with the Vila Bay, and I'm just referencing that as a point of reference because it's very close to what we have here in terms of price, in terms of how many units you have, and in terms of some of the same issues, the parking, the drainage, all those issues are very parallel. And it's just a known quantity to not do well in our community, and that's why I have an issue. And you say, and I understand there's a fear that maybe something else could go in, but that doesn't mean that we should, because we fear the unknown on what else someone may want to do with the property, that we should go into an already known issue where it's had problems.
We already have rentals in the area at $800 a square foot, or $800 a month, excuse me. We have units at $1,500. Waterfront, single-family waterfront housing in part south goes for between $2,000 to $2,500. We don't have any of that, really, where we have the ability to rent that. Well, I mean, so we're already at the low and the middle range. We don't have the area to get the high-end rents yet.
No, I understand that we're in the middle range, but the middle range hasn't worked for the city and the other developments. So that was the concern. It's just by comparison. And I don't see why this would be any different than what's at Avila Bay.
I think it would be different because you're not dealing with a 3-story building like this. You're going to get a lot more older people probably that want to build this, not 3-story buildings. And they're more permanent people.
Yeah, no 55 and older is going to go into a 3-story walk-up. Hell, I barely go in a 3-story walk-up.
Mr. Kinsella, I was
Yep.
curious. I wanted to hear from you and your opinion.
I have some concerns with this proposal. I really don't like the restrictions that the city would have with being a gated community. A lot of concerns. I keep hearing everybody referring to Villa Bay. When it was proposed, it was a beautiful picture. Look what it came to today. So you can't do that comparison, and I don't think it's fair. I've listened to our citizens. They have the concerns. I think we need to do some more homework working with the developer if that's possible. I don't think there has to be a happy medium here someplace, and I don't see it yet. Again, I just got some concerns over the proposal.
And I'm on board with working with the builder, but like I said, one of the sticking points is just having more units. Obviously there's variances, so they put more units there, which increases profitability. So I understand why it's there. If they came in and said, look, 190 was too much and 78 was too little, and they were closer to the 100 range or the 90 range, and they had less units that maybe a little bit more in the amenities range, I think that might change my mind a little bit. And that's kind of just a matter of opinion. I think the more units that you put on, the more issues that you have, and so I'm okay with working with the builders, but I don't know. That's up to them on what they want to do. It's their land at the end of the day too, and I recognize that.
So you disagree with the 126?
I think that's too many units on that property. Just like I think there's too many units on Avila Bay, and I think that's part of the issue. Because if you look at the rest of the land around there, you're talking these waterfront homes, and even around here, small family unit homes. There's other than the 55 and over community, there's nothing like it, and that's one of the issues that I have. And I think if you had less units on that piece of land, I'd be okay with that. Whether they're rentals or not rentals or whatever, that's not the issue for me. The issue is the vision and the direction of the city and how many units are on there. That's my biggest issue.
But wouldn't you prefer to have a choice on what's going in there than not having a choice with the 3-story buildings going in?
Like I said, I'm fine working with the builders. I don't have an issue with that. I just don't like it the way it sits now. So
what do you want? I mean, I'm okay. What do you want? He wants to know what you want.
I think Mr. McClary kind of was moving in the right direction, that there's going to be other restrictions, and there may be some things that we can do to
Like
fix
what?
some of the. Probably, I think he was addressing some of them, and I was on board with what he was saying. But I share some of those same concerns, and
I'm okay. Just give me some kind of answer so that I know what it is that we're headed towards.
if it were me, and I could talk to the builder and say, look, I'd be much more comfortable with less units.
How many?
Huh?
How many?
And I think that's partly with engineering, enough to where you have the wider roads, you don't have the variances between the buildings and all that. I'd be a lot more comfortable.
I think he can put in 106 units in this kind of the current configuration and tell us to go scratch, and he doesn't need anything from us. If I recall correctly, in going through the documentation, I'm looking for nodding, but
I would be more comfortable with that. You got less units and less issues. It would cure some of the issues that are there if you had less units.
But what issues are you curing? 20 rentals?
Sure, but you start adding all those people up, imagine.
You're talking about 20 families at the end of the day of what we are going through, and then he doesn't have to do the 4-foot sidewalks on either side. We have no say over what he can and can't do. He can say, you know what, I'm not even going to put the fence up now.
Yeah. And if I got 250 units, I got close to 500 people in this area. Plus children, plus pets, plus cars, plus family, plus.
we really don't have as much say as we think we do on this whole thing.
We
I
don't.
understand.
We really don't.
Because, you know, and part of it I've seen, you know, I mean, even in Newport Richey, they had near the waterfront community, they put in the same type of units, and it went south, and it just affected all the property values, and they had all the problems, and.
It's a risk we take.
So you put in 106 units of rental. He says, all right, fine, I'll do 106, and you know what? I'm not required to any square footage things, and I'll do a couple 800s, and I'll do some 900s, and I'll really, I mean, he's got a revenue that he's got to hit that's in his pro forma right now, excuse me, it's getting late. And he can get that, he can do it a wide variety. He can do half of this as 800 square foot units, and then the other half is these single family villas, and he's still within his requirements, and we still don't have a thing we can say about it.
I understand. But if I'm asked about this, that was just my opinion, that's all.
Yeah, I'm just.
What evil do you want? Well, apparently a lot of people disagree with it, so for lack of a better description, and, you know, which one do you want? 120
We have a
units
choice.
or
We can either do a
250 units?
continuance and try and talk to him about it, or two, we can put requirements on now and establish what those requirements on, and then put some on his way. Or three, we can reject it and then roll the dice and see where he wants to go with it. I don't recommend option three. I don't think that's a good idea. To me, option one or option two is really the only thing, and it's getting late and it's getting past my bedtime, so let's figure out what we're going to do.
Mr. Kinsella.
I like the idea of a continuance.
I'm leaning that way too, and like I said, it's not an outright no, but I have these concerns, and I think that you sounded like you had similar concerns, and that having been said, you have a builder that wants to invest a lot of money here, which increases our tax base, so there are some perks. I mean, I see the other end of it, but like I said, I wanted to do the best we can for the city.
My question is, what involvement we as a council can we be involved with?
No.
We can't.
You can't.
We can't.
We can ask him, you know, make some suggestions and
He's
ask him.
coming here and talking to us and working with us right now.
Right.
Tomorrow, he doesn't have to.
I understand that, but again, he appears he's willing to work with us, and I like to afford that opportunity to find that happy medium for us. I don't know what that happy medium would be.
I'm not sure but no one has told me what we're asking of him. Do you want him to go to 106 units? And would you say, well, why do if I go to 106 units, then why do I even need to talk to you? He doesn't. So if we say, okay, well, let's go to 116 units, we'll split the difference. Okay, now we're talking about 10 units that we're going to be moving around for.
That was my biggest concern when I looked at the site plan, was the amount of units.
I'm just saying where it is, and I'm not, you know, I'm just trying to say, here's where we are.
I don't know the magic number, but what I can tell you by looking at this, in my humble opinion, less is better. That's the best I can tell you.
Well, yeah, I'm sure we would like Bill Gates to move into the center of it too, and build a 100,000 square foot home and pay all kinds of taxes for everybody. Hell, I'd love it, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay.
We gotta work with what we got.
No, I agree.
So if the variance is the biggest problem you have with, which is why he's here, he wants to change it from the R3C1 to the PUD, which is what that's the real whole purpose of this.
That's
5 foot
difference.
difference.
Plus, phase two, I think, is not under that requirement of that also, right? That could be a 20 already, correct? Right.
Yeah,
So what we're doing was splitting hairs on the property. It's already, he can do it right now on the other half of the property at 20 feet. Now we're gonna hold the 25 feet on the other side of the yellow line, which, to me, I don't know if that makes a whole lot of sense.
Okay. So I'm open to any kind of motions. If there's no motion on the table, we're not going to take any public commentary yet. But if there's any motions, which can be a motion to approve, a motion to deny, or a motion to continue, I think are our three different options. And-
to open the common permission or
Um,
Your
proceed.
question to me? You've closed this case, okay?
Correct.
You want to ask the mayor something? Please go to the microphone so we can hear you.
Yep.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make a quick comment so you can make a right decision tonight.
Okay.
You're on, hold
If
on
you
a
allow
second.
me.
Hold on a second here. Okay, you've closed the case, you're having discussion. Do you understand what I mean? You're going to allow the party, reopen the case, you're going to reopen it to these people too.
No, I can't, because.
Do you understand what I'm saying? In other words, it's over. You
Yeah,
understand what I mean?
it's closed, the evidence portion
The
is
evidence
closed.
portion is closed. Okay, if
Right.
you're going to reopen the case, that's okay, but you're going to have to
We're gonna have to go
invite-
through the whole.
Go through the whole thing.
Right, I got you. So I don't want to reopen the case.
You can.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not saying you can't.
No.
I'm just saying,
I wasn't going to introduce any new evidence. A response to you.
your closing argument's done already.
Everyone's staring at me.
You know, I know it's a little late, but I'm also very curious on what he has to say. So if it means staying late, opening it back up, and take the comments from the public as well.
Well, let me ask this from a procedural standpoint. If there's a motion on the table, then he can comment to the motion after a second?
Not the parties, I think the general public can.
Oh, just the general public, not
Yes,
the party?
just yeah.
Okay.
Because the parties are treated different than the public, so. But if we reopen it, then all the different parties get to.
Everybody comes back again and
Correct.
we go over it again.
Correct. And I think that Vice Mayor's right, that, I mean, all the information's out there. You know, it's just on whether or not we agree on a decision, and sometimes we don't, and that's why you get 3-2 votes and 4-1 votes and so on and so forth. So, you know, and whether it's continued, whether it's approved or denied, I think it's kind of time for a motion one way or the other. And fortunately, I'm the one person up here that can't make a motion, so.
I'd like to make a motion that we continue this.
There's a motion, there's no second, so that motion would, I think, would die at this time procedurally. And looking for any other motions and or commenters.
Motion to approve the application.
Second.
Before we vote, 2 things. I want to hear back from the public. And then I want to hear some more discussion if we're going to approve it, if we're going to ask for some different conditions that may be attached, because I think that merits some discussion as well.
Mayor, as a matter of protocol, I presume that's a motion to approve subject to the, I'm looking for the exact language, the conditions, correct? Correct, that your motion is subject to the conditions of approval, your motion for approval is subject to the conditions of approval and nothing else, okay? And that yeah, I move that the city council request a zoning change. Yeah, okay, that'll be enough, okay?
Thank you.
All right, I just want to
This
have
time
that
I'm
on
going to
there.
open it to the general public for comment.
If they want to make comment, you can do that.
Absolutely. Anyone that would like to speak, there wasn't a section to sign up, so I'd like to see a show of hands before there's a vote, if there's any comments from the general public. Come on up. We'll start. Mr. Burke, you'll go next, if that's okay.
Clinton Wynn, 12709 Wynn Lane in Hudson. I still haven't heard anything about Broadway. What are you going to do about Broadway?
Broadway belongs to county.
Right, but there's an entrance from this development going on to Broadway, and Broadway cannot maintain that and handle that.
It's still the county's responsibility, from what I understand.
Okay, so why was Washington paid but not Broadway? These are just questions we're throwing out.
Washington
The
belongs
city
to
paid
us.
for Washington, the county is Broadway's. Or
Okay.
Broadway is the county's.
So is the entrance from the development onto Broadway, was that permitted? Is that approved? Or did someone just throw a driveway up there and put a gate there? No, but it's already there.
Yeah, it would have probably gone through the original
Well, it'd be good to
approval
see,
process.
because, look, like a lot in Pasco, people turn their hands and open their hands and close their eyes, okay? So I think someone needs to look at it. I'm just telling you, Broadway cannot handle access from this development. It is a mess. And then people like me, I pay taxes on my property on Pulsar, and again, I want development. I'm not saying don't develop this, okay? We gotta do it right. But for God's sakes, don't dump all this water and all this traffic onto Broadway. It's a mess. It is a mess. And I've already gone to the county about Broadway. I'm already talking to DOT. But what you guys need to find out is who put that road leaving that development onto Broadway. Was it permitted and was it approved? I don't know. And I think you guys better make sure you do it before, because there's going to be a real mess if nobody did. Because somebody just could have put asphalt there. Come on. When people just clear stuff around here and close their eyes at night. Okay? I'm just here to help you. I want to see this cleared. I want to see this developed. I want to see it improved to help us. Okay? I've got property I can't sell on Pulsar Street. So I'm here to help. I want to be constructive. Okay? But I'm just saying, let's look at everything. I'm not trying to knock this guy out and try and not have development. I don't want transient people, okay? But I'm just saying, let's look at everything. You guys vote, you vote, but then you guys have to live with your vote, and those votes can be public, and it goes in the newspaper, and then when things happen 30 years from now, you guys get to have it reflected on your image. That's all. So I'm trying to be helpful, but we need to look at the entire picture. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Burke, come on up.
Your Honor, just for the record and protocol, judicial fairness here, this is a time for comments, okay? However, we now have had an exchange here, and in fairness now that you've opened it up for evidence and comments and cross-examination by those comments, that you need to allow the applicant now at the end of this, and we go through the round one more time.
Yes, I agree.
Now you can continue that with it going forward if you want to ask questions of these people. There's got to be a point in time when you have a motion and just comments and proceed ahead. If you keep doing this, we're going to keep going around and around. So go ahead. So if you let this gentleman have the same latitude.
Kenneth Burke, Washington Street. Again, let me reiterate here. We are not opposed to development. We know it's going to be developed. My question is why cannot the city help control what we have coming in to our small community? It is small. There is more value in 55 plus community. It has been proven. There's a waiting list at Abigail Court. He'll have a waiting list down there too. I can guarantee it. People at 55 plus are more stable. It's a proven fact. They have more dispendable cash.
We can't mandate a 55.
No, I didn't say we had. We're going to. We're going to ask. We're allowed to ask this guy. Okay. I'm not saying we need to do that. I'm saying that is what we would look forward to. The residents don't have a problem with the development. But dot your I's and cross your T's. You can't control or ask for help as who do you bring into your community. And so I asked this developer right here. I'm not against that. I live right across the street from this.
Mr. Burke, you can.
You can't have this.
Nope. You can comment, but you can't ask people questions.
So I'm asking the developer to think about a 55 plus community. I think it's a much more stable environment for the city of Port Richey. Thank you.
Thanks. And at this time, we're going to take more comments, but we're going to allow the builder in city to
Go back and make rebuttal statements.
Absolutely. So Mrs. Scher, I see that your hand's up. Come on up.
Sherry Scher, 7802 Davis Street. I'm just, from what I've been hearing, when you make a motion, if you're going to approve this, you're already making a motion to approve some traffic problem with not enough parking in the streets. So if you make a motion, you have to make the caveat of maybe one side, or, if there's any way the developer can put in a little bit more parking for people that were coming to visit, people that lived there. I don't know if there's space, but that might be something that you could add to that might not be so much of a burden. So my thing is just when you make your motion, you're making a motion when you know there's problems, so you might want to put a caveat in there to try to alleviate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scherer. Mrs. Rogers, come on up.
Pat Rogers, 4838 Sunset Boulevard. I was on the original Planning and Zoning Committee when this property was originally set up, and our side entrance was for emergency vehicles only. That was the recommendation that the council received. So that might explain, and that could help alleviate some of their issues with traffic on the side street. Because if it's just for emergency purposes only the ambulance, police, and fire would be using it.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Just because it's getting late.
Sure.
Where did the, noted here as exit only, it came from P&Z that it was a secondary entrance? Where did that secondary entrance come from? We said it, we talked about it, I don't remember where.
The city planner.
City planner?
Yeah.
Recommended, okay. No? No?
Tammy, if you go to speak, I'm just trying to keep the record.
Yeah, I understand. Tammy Verona, Verona Consulting. That was a recommendation from, I believe, the fire department during the development review of the project.
For a full secondary
Yes,
exit?
so it was an exit only, exit only.
Yeah, it's noted here as exit only,
Right.
emergency.
And
block.
a condition of approval was that they have 2 full access points.
In and out. In and out,
In and out,
both of them.
yes.
Thank you. I think there were still people in the general public that wanted to comment, if there were any more hands. No, then at this time, what I wanted to do is reopen, and I'll start with the city if there were any additional comments or cross-examination or any additional information you want us to know. You have the opportunity to speak again because I allowed the public. Okay. Hey, Carlos, come on up. Yes.
Okay. Really, the only comment that I have is but you come in and trying to reduce the units, it does not work, by the way. So what will happen is we will then make more space between units, but then we got to bring 2-story buildings, which will bring more units. Okay. We will bring probably 150 units, then 160 units, and meet the codes and don't have to come back here. That's what I will do.
Okay.
I'm not going to build a 240. I will sell it because, and I believe you're in the real estate business because you made a comment about there are literally in this market an appetite for apartment sites. I could sell this property very quickly for someone to build 240. It's not what I want to do. But I will build 150, 160 units because that works. Okay. But I will have to build 2-story buildings in order to meet that 2.5 feet you're not going to give me.
Okay.
That's the conclusion if this fails today. You're forcing me my hand to do that. Don't want to do that, but if I have to do it, I will do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So now we've got a motion, we've got a second, and we've reopened it.
Can I
for
amend the motion?
Comment. What's that? What's that?
You want to amend it, or you repeat the motion, what it is, it's been a while.
Well, the original motion was to approve the zoning change with the caveats that we discussed.
Okay, well, I was going to amend it to lay out some of the specific caveats, or
Just so you understand here, there's conditions of approval. It's a document in front of you. It's one of the second document you should read.
we have additional beyond that.
I'm getting to that. It's your original motion was to approve subject to the conditions of approval. Now you want to amend your motion for other things we talked about?
Yes.
Okay. Additional
Let get those other things in. Single side street parking.
Well, it's his motion.
Oh.
You can ask him,
Yes, because the single side street parking was one of the ones we wanted.
1,100 square foot rentable unit,
Minimum.
minimum,
Single side parking?
side parking,
Side street.
One side only.
one side only.
One side only. Minimum
1,100 square foot.
1,100, because it's 800 in the application comparison. 1,100 square foot. I got it. Go ahead, sir.
Agreement in place for the police to be able to patrol the development upon rental, first rental.
The MOU. Well, first, okay, let me just.
As soon as he rents the first unit, gets a C of O on the first unit, the police can drive in.
So you understand, for a government to contract with someone in that nature, okay, has to be for a special district or something along those lines. I haven't researched it yet, but whether this PUD being owned by one thing would be a special district, but I think we could do that. However, it is only for traffic control, nothing more. So just so everybody understands that. So in other words, Chief and I just did this with Avila Bay, and I think that's what you were talking about before. He wasn't talking about this MOU. He was referring to the Avila Bay one.
I know, but
Yeah, but just so you understand, so it's how fast the cars are going. They want to pay us extra. We'll sit a car out there like you see sometimes when you go through a development, those kind of things. But it's not for anything beyond traffic control. That's all we can do on private roads. No more than we could do on the road you live on.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
but what
so
we're
when you
saying
say an
is
MOU,
the-
I just want everybody to understand what this agreement is.
The agreement has to be in place upon first rental as opposed to now with Avila Bay where it's still not in place. So he can't rent one unit until they come to the agreement.
Okay, it's just as long as everybody knows what that is. Go ahead.
Fencing type to match, on Broadway to match Washington Street. The developer agrees to full review and evaluation of all existing utilities.
Say it again, sir.
Agrees to full evaluation and reparation of all utilities in place.
What
The infrastructure.
I'm very familiar with the infrastructure. Oh, what kind of review?
Agrees to a full evaluation and repair of all infrastructure to ensure.
I guess the water going in, our responsibility ends, correct me if I make a mistake here, Dallas, ends at the master meter.
Yes, but he's agreeing to evaluate all of the existing storm structures, all of the existing sewer structures, and all of the existing water structures.
I understand. It's kind of like, right now, the city has responsibility to a meter. Okay, beyond that, we don't examine somebody's pipe.
I'm not telling him we're going to do it. I'm telling him he's going to do it and supply the building department the.
He's got to. What's our interest in it is what I'm trying to figure out. If we put water up to that meter, everything going further in is his problem. It leaks all over the place. It's his problem. We're not fixing anything. Generally, we inspect because
Unless if we have a leaking sewer pipe that's dumping into the ground or something of that
that would be an environmental issue for anywhere, no more than if it was leaking from your house before you got it out to the street. Do you understand what I mean? We do those type of inspections and requirements when we're taking over the road and we're taking over the pipes. We're
Right
not
now, we
taking
have
over
no
any-
engineering department that would normally do the inspections to that. So he would provide the independent inspection that is then submitted to Dallas, correct?
Yeah, we're not going to issue a use and occupancy permit until we've done our inspections, but these aren't our responsibilities going forward. So in other words, he's saying this stuff, he wants to certify him that it's good. We're going to do whatever we normally would do to issue a use and occupancy permit, but these utilities are not our, under our control nor owned by us.
But
What's your concern more than the legality of it? Your concern is?
The concern is, one, that the storm structures are fully operational and undamaged for stormwater runoff, which he has to certify. that really doesn't go to anybody at this point, so.
No, DEP will review that. DEP does their own inspection.
Could you stand at the microphone?
DEP is the person that's going to do the stormwater and all that. They come in and do their independent certifications and approval of that.
They'll recertify all of the existing.
Prior, at completion
structure?
of
Okay.
development, they have to come in and
That's-
do that prior. As far as
Yeah.
the utilities are privately owned past all of our meters, if I'm not mistaken, correct, Sean? So
Okay.
if something goes, breaks, leaks, whatever,
Then it's his-
it's his responsibility.
Yeah, that was kind of was my point, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's, anything else on the list, sir?
Is there anything
Can
else we
I
discussed?
mention something? I think one of the issues that I'd like to see addressed if we're going to approve this is some additional parking over and above the 2 per unit. In other words, if he's got a clubhouse and he has, let's say, 10%, which would be 12 or 13 extra spaces around the clubhouse, that would certainly, I think, alleviate some of the issues.
Well, right now he's got 6, looks like.
But if we could expand that a little bit, it may help. 12?
12?
Not out of the playground.
Well,
It's good.
there's only so much space over there he has to put parking in too.
No, I
Well,
understand. That's why I was asking.
I think as part of the 12 spaces, spread them around a little bit instead of all at the clubhouse, because there's some significant walking between a unit and a clubhouse, so if we could spread them around a little bit.
But
and-
12 wherever he wants to put them, but 12 extra spaces.
Yeah, but now is our chance to say, yeah, spread them around a little bit, instead of all 12 of them at the clubhouse.
You're in the middle of a motion. It's being amended.
Okay.
Okay, so I think he made a motion, he delegated him to give the list of the finer points. He's going through those finer points. Are we done with those finer points?
Which include the 12 parking.
Which include 12 parking spaces.
This includes 12 additional parking spaces?
12 additional parking spaces for overflow parking.
I'm not sure I understand. I'm writing down what you say.
12 total or 12 on top of the 6, I think is what he's trying to put.
12 on top of the 6. 18 total.
18 total where? No, I mean, 18, you want, in other words, you want the builder to have 18 more parking spaces per his PUD plan? Or what?
No, he's got 6 in front of the clubhouse right now.
Oh, this is
and
at the
there's-
clubhouse?
There's 6 at the clubhouse right now. I'm saying let's do another 12 strategically placed. Dallas will work it out. We can designate Dallas to work out a logical.
Oh, I don't care where, I'm just trying to write it down.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know, the 6.
It's 1,500 a spot. He doesn't care. That's all
And
I
you're
have.
good with these things? Okay.
So we have a motion, we have the new amendments to the motion.
I mean, you good with them? It's your motion. You good with them? You want me to read them back again real quick? Okay. And I'm probably going to ask staff or Tammy or something to literally put these in the conditions, okay, in better language, okay, when it comes back to you. One side parking, 1,100 square foot minimum, the MOU in place before the first rental, the Broadway in Washington outside fence to match to the nicer one, okay, and the 12 additional parking spaces, right?
That's the motion.
Motion and a second. And this time we're going to put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Motion passes 3-2.
Just hang on one second, Mr. Yocum. Just so council, excuse me. I will You're authorizing the council, the mayor to sign the resolution, okay, and things like that going with this. Just so you understand, all PUDs are done by ordinance. I'll be bringing back an ordinance at the next meeting for 2 readings. I think you know that. That's the only way I held you up, Mr. Hammond. Okay? Another routine, you got it. All right, that's it.
Thank you and welcome to the city. Yep. All right. Do you guys want to take a couple-minute break, or do we want to finish this out?
Let's get this done.
All right.
That's my opinion. You better ask them.
We'll get to that in a second. Does anyone need a break? for
How
any reason?
about 4 and 5? Can we
Okay.
table those? Can that come up next year? So we can table 4 and 5?
All right, so what I'd like to do is table 4 and 5 until the next meeting, which potentially could be at the next year. Is that okay with everybody, by consensus?
Mhm.
Mr. Kinsella?
Tom?
That's fine. Okay. So what we're going to do is move on to item 6, and that's going to be our discussion on city manager contract. And I'm going to go to 4 and 5 we've
We're
tabled
moving
at
them
this
to the
point.
next.
Okay, 4 table. Okay, 5. Got the city manager thing, right?
Yes. The city manager contract, I think, has to be dealt with, so let's, you can sit here for that, it's fine. Yeah. Because I think you're, in a second,
In reality, Lynn, you can go and watch YouTube and you'll be right back on it again, so.
So I was going to pass this to our city attorney.
Could we take that outside? This is really a serious matter. Thank you. Let me just grab my agenda item here. With regard to the candidate, Mr. Doot, I sent out an email to him. I sent an email to council. There's 4 issues. I have them. I'll go through them. The other issues we've pretty much resolved, Mr. Doot and myself. So in terms of these 4 items, I want to know what your position is. And so what's going to happen here is you'll either say, yes, I'm fine with all these, or go back and negotiate a certain thing. And if so, I'll do that. We're going to have to discuss how you want to go back and forth for purposes of expediency. So the most important one, obviously, is the annual salary. His request is $130,000. So I want to know what you want to do.
I want to go around first and see if anyone has an issue with that. I think that's a fair salary given our demographics.
But I'll start, when we were interviewing, he was asked that question, and he made a comment about 120.
Yeah, I think I asked him if you
Yes,
do.
and he said he would be happy with 120.
No, go ahead.
Mayor, you did ask that question, and he said he did his research, and he says a city this size, he says a fair would be 120.
I agree with him and him. We're just asking him to abide by what he said in his own interview, so it's really no change from there.
I was okay with the 130, but the consensus, I think well, I was going to get your take on that.
Well, our last city manager was at 94, I believe, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
With a car and a couple other little amenities. That's a pretty drastic raise in a city manager's salary.
So you're with the 120?
Reluctantly.
Okay. So by consensus, I'm okay with 120. I'm at least offering him that and see if he accepts.
120K is counteroffer, right?
Yes, by consensus.
Yes.
Second, my apologies. 3-year term?
I'm agreeable with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Does that fall under the clause or no clause type of contract?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, you might want to comment on this also, being an attorney. It is an at-will contract, and that's what we've done. And so I appreciate the comments, kind of like, well, if it's at will,
Why do we have to have it?
well, the
Why do
point
we have a
is-
3-year term if it's that?
We have a contract at all.
Exactly, exactly. And I guess, and I've had a rather long conversation with the candidate regarding that. He understands it very well. And I told him that it would be subject to our charter, which shows charges have to be bringing things like this. We've talked about that. And at the same time, he says, well, it's at will, so what does that do for him? Nothing. It's the same thing. What does it do for us? Me outside a show of commitment. So you're correct in your comment, okay? Unless you can explain that better.
It's a feel-good
statement. Yeah, correct, in some ways. And 9,000 moving expense.
Yeah, that's 10 grand we saved from the 130.
I'm okay with that.
I'm good with that.
I'm just, okay. Now, the last one,
Well, are you, Jenny?
I'm sorry, I thought you had decided. I'm sorry.
9,000 moving expense, I guess we did save it from the 130. I guess that's a possibility. It's an awful lot of money.
Are we good with that? I don't want to rush. Believe me.
One other question. We had in place that they had to live in the city limits.
Well, that's the last one, yes. The last one is living in the city limits. I chatted with the candidate at some length, and being forced to live in the city limits would be problematic. He has a family, certain parameters in terms of what type of house he would live in, things like that narrows it down. This is what I'm repeating what he said. Limits his choices. So he says, well, maybe we could do something within a certain distance of City Hall, okay? And he said maybe 5 miles or something like that. I'm not saying that making him live in the city is a deal breaker, but I think it'd be problematic, so gotta look at what you want.
But isn't he living currently in the requirement where he's at now? He had to live within the city limits.
I may have that in the file.
He is.
here.
When he interviewed,
Yeah.
he said that he bought one of 6 homes that was on the market and moved in.
And he had to rent for 2 months or 3 months when he was waiting for it to come
Yeah,
out
check.
online.
I can't remember. I'm
Correct.
sorry.
No, I remember that conversation, so.
I don't know, I think that living in the city limit, you think more about some of the decisions that are made within the city because you live in it. So I understand why that was put in there originally. So I yes, he has fewer choices, but that was actually in the paperwork, right, originally, when it went out for bid, that the requirements were posted.
I remember him turning to Tom and saying, well, why wouldn't I live in the city, or something to that effect. And then he said, subject to his wife.
In answer to your question, I don't know if Colin Basinger put that in his open, I don't know, and I don't want to guess.
I don't believe it was in the requirements. I don't recall reading it.
I'm all for it, but I don't really feel strong either way. I think there's pros and cons to both sides of that.
I'm neutral on that issue, whether, I do like the idea of if he's not in the city, if he's very close by, I do like that idea. But
There's kind of the caveat of us having to live in the city and making decisions.
so I'm neutral on that issue. So whatever
I would like to see him make an honest effort to live within the city limits. But then again, not knowing finances, again, restrict that distance.
Preston Village getting built.
Yeah, I know, 120 units coming down.
3-bedroom, 2 bath.
3-bedroom, 2 bath. 2.5 bath. I'm not feeling very strongly. I do think, like Tom said, there should be every effort to be made living in the city. If not, then it should be no more than 5 miles. I think that was a fair item from his standpoint, so, but I'm not super strong.
I think it's a problematic thing to have him required to live in the city, but within a 25-mile radius. Our police officers don't have to.
So 5 miles.
We have to because we're elected officials. This isn't an elected official, it's an employee.
But I like Tom's idea that he make an effort to find housing in the city and up to 5 miles. Seems appropriate.
Yeah, I agree.
You think we have a selection big enough to give him a variety in this?
I don't know, I've looked on Zillow. I think the 5-mile radius is fair.
Yeah, I think it is too. I think that'll give them a wide variety to choose from.
Whatever you want.
I've recently been down that road, so I think 5-mile radius is fair.
And we don't know his family situation. I don't know if he's got children that are in school. He may have to be considering the school systems. I mean, you know.
That's his responsibility, not really ours. He's the one applying for the position here.
So he won't take the position because he can't find adequate schools for his children?
Make an effort to find something in the city and then within 5 miles.
5 miles puts them right in Golden Acres, so you get all the schools over there. So you got other areas right around that's close.
Or Moon Lake?
I think there's a ton of opportunity within 5 miles, so that's fair, and he should make every opportunity to.
But I think that was what he was asking, and I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Would that be 5 miles from the edge of the?
5 miles from where I'm sitting right here. Google this seat, 5 miles. Oh, no.
Well, he's going to ask you this, and you may think it's silly, but how much time would he get before you have to do that? In other words, let's say he started 5 weeks from now, does he have to be right in the city that day?
No, I think he can rent outside the city while he's looking for a.
Well, that's what I'm saying. His permanent residence, whether he rents or buys, you can't expect him to do that.
But are you going to give him 90 days?
Oh, I
or are you
see.
gonna
So
give
within
him-
6
90
months of his employment, he must be living within 5 miles of this seat.
I would say 6 months is fair because you never know what.
With the market and stuff, okay.
Yeah, he can either rent it within 6 miles of this seat or buy within 6 miles of this seat. Huh?
5 miles.
5 miles of this seat.
Todd's tired, he wants to go home.
At 9 o'clock, I was at,
It's past your bedtime.
yeah.
I'll take, those are the only ones that we have that were outstanding, really. Those are the only ones that were outstanding. So what I'll do, unless you tell me otherwise, is I will tomorrow contact Mr. Dute and pass on this counteroffer of $120,000 in the 5 miles within 6 months and see his position on that. Okay, if he says yes to both of those conditions, I'll prepare. I'll prepare an agreement as quickly as I can, send it over to him for signature. And when I get that signed, I'll come back to the council. I'll send an email out to all of you. It's ready. I'll probably just contact Sal. Presuming you're not going to have a council meeting 2 days before Christmas, unless you want to wait that amount of time, someone will need to call for a special meeting. If you call for a special meeting, I believe you can do it, Mayor, with yourself, or if somebody else does it, 2 people. 3 people now have to be present for a quorum. 2 could appear by phone, okay? So you could do that. So in other words, if you want to get the, he signs it, brings it over. The only thing you'd be authorizing is the mayor to authorize, sign the contract.
So it'd be a single subject.
Single subject.
We come in 5 minutes, you run it off.
But only 3 if you need.
We say yay and he
Yeah,
signs.
that's right. Only 3 would need to attend. So if somebody, okay, so I'm just letting you know that could be a process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
we'll figure it out.
you with me on that? I'm just telling you that. And Sal will call you, me and Sal will work it out, but if he counters on the 120 or counters on the City Hall thing, I will shoot that back to you. So you'll probably hear from me about tomorrow. Okay, I'm presuming we'll get right back to me. And, but that's how we can do it mechanically. Are we good with that?
And the other issue I wanted to
And
bring
by
up.
the way, he needs 4 weeks from the date it's signed by both of us. Then he's got to get that, he said he would immediately present it to his council. So I'll put a start date appropriate.
But I was going to raise an issue with that. I know that we contracted with Mr. Sossaman, and I think his contract runs out in
Yeah,
that
as a matter
interim.
of fact, thank you.
So I wanted to know if Mr. Sossaman's going to be gracious enough to stick with the city, if, you know, until we get.
Yeah, Mr. Sossaman had a contract which was not to exceed 6 months, which runs out in a couple of weeks, unless you state otherwise. If Mr. Sossaman's willing to just stay on till this happens.
I was going to ask him to see if he would stay, because he's done a
I'm asking him right
fantastic
now.
job,
Yeah,
and I think if we're willing to pay him what we've been paying him, you know, until we get full, you know, Mr. Duday here.
If you want to extend it, you know, for however long it takes, I'm sure it's going to take you 4 weeks, which is not uncommon in terms of having contracts like that. So that's fine. Just extend it, and that'll give me some latitude to plan for my my upcoming holiday when we have Christmas.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Do we need to vote on that, or is that?
Yeah.
Can we have a motion?
Yeah, if you could just.
Motion to extend Mr. Sossaman's contract through the start of Mr. Doot.
All in
That'll
favor?
be good enough, and
Okay.
if for some reason it falls apart, I'll bring it back before you. That's good enough motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Sossaman.
And I'll get back to you on Mr. Dude, most likely tomorrow, okay? So look for your emails.
All right, thank you. The next item up is going
Sal's
to be
getting punchy.
the consideration of the collective bargaining unit contract. I was going to pass that to Mr. Matthew as well.
I can do this off the top of my head. Before you, do you remember we gave a 2% raise? This is CWA. We gave a 2% raise. We also we increased the personal property reimbursement with regard to prescription eyewear only to $300. And I cleaned up some language concerning when somebody retires out. We already did this pursuant to our personnel manual, but it read a little bad that they would get all of their vacation time and 50% of their sick time. So this contract here was voted on and approved by the CWA, and it's before you with those 3 changes in, and I'm just looking for authority to have the mayor sign it.
Motion?
Motion to approve the fiscal year 2021 contract agreement with the CWA as
Second.
stated.
All in favor?
Aye.
The last item up on council business is going to be any discussion or motion to cancel the December 22nd, 2020 city council meeting.
Motion to approve cancellation December
Second.
22nd. Aye.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any old business?
No.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second? All in
Second.
favor? Aye.